Good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Let's talk about health care changes for older Americans. They're going to be seeing some changes in 2023. Brand name drug prices, they've grown faster than general inflation now for more than a decade, meaning a growing number of patients have had to go without necessary medications. That's why AARP has been working hard to convince lawmakers to allow Medicare to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies, levy tax penalties on drug makers that raise prices more than inflation, and then cap Medicare Part D out-of-pocket costs. Let's talk about some of those changes for Medicare recipients right now with Lee Purvis, AARP's Senior Director of Healthcare Costs. Lee, good morning. Appreciate you being here. So let's talk about the changes that Medicare participants will be seeing this year.
Yeah, there are three really big changes that all Medicare beneficiaries should be aware of. Starting in January, recommended vaccines are now free for all Medicare beneficiaries. Also, Medicare beneficiaries who are in prescription drug plans will now have $35 cost sharing for their insulin. And another really big important change that you already mentioned is that drug companies will now be penalized if they increase their prices faster than inflation, which will hopefully discourage them from taking those big price increases that we've been seeing lately.
Okay, and how does this compare to 2022? I mean, you mentioned what we can expect in 2023. How does that compare with what we saw last year?
So last year, frankly, none of those protections were in place. People sometimes for vaccines were paying upwards of $100 as a cost sharing for their vaccines. And we also saw people who were taking insulin that were paying on average around $50 per month for their insulin, sometimes as much as $100 per month. So this change is a really important one because it's going to result in a lot of savings. And when it comes to those price increases, AARP has been reporting on prescription drug prices for a very long time. And the reality is nothing was in the system to stop drug companies from taking those big price increases, and now something is there because of this new law.
All right, well, let's talk about vaccines for Medicare beneficiaries this year. What's the change and what can they expect?
So previously, vaccines could be covered under your Medicare prescription drug plan. And depending on your plan and where you were in the benefits, sometimes you could have cost sharing of hundreds of dollars. And now that's going to stop. All recommended vaccines will now be available for free for Medicare beneficiaries. So that's going to hopefully reduce some obstacles that people may have had to getting the vaccines that they need.
We lost your audio.
Lee, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can. Thank you. You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So apologize for that. I was wondering if you could kind of give us some insight into people here in the Mid-South. Of course, we're in Tennessee, but we also cover Mississippi and Arkansas. Those people on Medicare that use insulin, how is that going to change in 2023?
So specific to Tennessee, there are about 83,000 people who are currently using insulin. So that is going to be a really big change for them because their cost sharing is now going to be hopefully greatly reduced down to $35 or potentially even less. And we know that there have been a lot of people who use insulin who have been facing really high out-of-pocket costs. So hopefully this change is going to take away kind of the struggles that people have been facing in terms of affording the medications that they need.
So let's talk about some of the other changes here. You're going through a lot of changes for older Americans, Medicaid, and or rather Medicare recipients. What about some other changes? When will we start to see those issues out-of-pocket prices? I know you mentioned a little bit off the top. Any other changes this year?
Yeah, there's some really big changes coming our way that will have a really big impact for a lot of people. The first is that Medicare is going to start reducing the amount that Medicare beneficiaries have to pay for their prescription drugs every year. Right now, there are some people who pay upwards of $10,000 for their prescription drugs when they're enrolled in a prescription drug plan. And by 2025, Medicare will limit the amount that people have to pay every year to $2,000. We know that more than 1 million people are paying more than that. So this is going to be a really big change for a very large number of people. And another really big important change is that Medicare is finally going to be allowed to negotiate the prices of popular prescription drugs. We're going to know the first 10 drugs that will be negotiated by the fall of this year, and the negotiated prices will become available in 2026. And that's not the end. There are going to be more drugs added every year, and we could see as many as 60 drugs with negotiated prices by 2030.
You know, a lot of our viewers are tuning in, trying to decipher some of these changes for 2023. Is there anything else you want to tell them, with regards to these changes? You've mentioned a lot already.
Yeah, this new law has an incredible number of provisions that are really going to help dramatically reduce prescription drug prices and costs for a lot of people. There are millions of people in this country who are on Medicare, and AARP is very well aware that many of them have been struggling with high prescription drug costs. And the provisions in this law are going to go a long way towards making sure that everyone has access to the drugs that they need.
Okay, and then I'm sure that there's a place online where people can go for more information, Lee. Where can people go to get this information you've talked about, and perhaps some other information as well?
People who want to learn more can go to aarp.org/rx.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, Lee Purvis, we really appreciate everything that you've said with regards to breaking down some of these changes for those older Americans. I'm sure that they're going to be thrilled with some of these changes you mentioned, and then where they can go, aarp.org, to get some more information on that. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate you, and we also appreciate this right now. Check that out. That is a nice shot of the sun on a Thursday morning from our Midtown High Five camera. Gorgeous to see. It's going to be dry today, which is another bright spot in more ways than one. And then look at this shot. Our downtown High Five camera looks amazing as well. After all the storms and stuff that we received yesterday and in the overnight hours, to see that kind of picture on a bright and early Thursday morning just after 8 o'clock, it is going to be a great day. It's a great day to have a great day in Memphis and the Mid-South. All right, let's get to our top stories right now. We'll talk about the forecast in just a little bit, but I want to get to this Texas plane crash involving church members and church staff from Germantown. The only survivor of this plane crash that killed 4 members of a Germantown church is breathing on his own. The Harvest Church says that lead pastor, Dr. Kenneth Vaughn, is also able to communicate through writing. Vaughn is still needing surgery after suffering from significant internal injuries in this crash. The executive pastor, Bill Garner, Elder Steve Tucker, along with church members Tyler Patterson, Tyler Springer, were killed in this crash. The FAA and TSB are investigating as well. Okay, right now we're going to take a little break here on the Action News 5 digital desk and bring in the Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary, Marcia Fudge. She is on the digital desk right now to talk about an announcement that's happening tomorrow. Secretary, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Thank you. I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here. So give us a preview of this announcement that's happening tomorrow.
We are announcing a new rule that we are trying to promulgate. It's called the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. And what it is a rule that is going to allow us to try to, at least in the best way we know how, ensure that communities are treated fairly in housing. Fair housing is the law of the land. And so civil rights activists, fair housing activists have been waiting on this rule for some time, because we understand that as a nation, we still have segregation throughout our communities. We still concentrate poverty. We still do all of the things that this rule was put in place to prevent. So it is a result of the Fair Housing Act of 1968. And we're just doing our part to ensure that we allow fair housing to be the law of the land, and that we ensure that communities are treated fairly. So we're asking for people to give us their input. We are going out now for the next 60 days, asking people to respond to what they see in the rule. And then we're going to work to be sure that we can treat every single citizen in this country with equity and fairness. That's the basics of the rule.
Okay, so Madam Secretary, got a question for you because we have thousands of viewers here in Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee. If they're watching right now and they believe that they may have been impacted by all this, what should they do?
There are two things they can do. One is they can contact our Fair Housing Office, because whether this rule is in effect or not, fair housing is still the law of the land. They can contact our Fair Housing Office, or they can go on to our website and file a complaint, or even call our office and ask for help. We are available. We have housing counselors. We have technical assistance that we provide to organizations. All they need to do is contact us.
Okay, can you give us the address or ways that people can reach out online, your website, also a phone number as well?
If they're having problems with housing, they should just go to HUD.gov. Just go to HUD.gov, and they can then navigate that system to figure out exactly which office they want to talk to. If they want to file a complaint, they can file a complaint there. If they want to talk about discrimination in some other form, they can put that in as well. But just go to HUD.gov, and they can get to pretty much anybody in our building.
Okay, and this announcement is going to be made today. What else can we tell our viewers?
Well, what you can say is that we understand that even though we've come a great way in this nation, we still do understand that discrimination in housing still exists, segregation in housing still exists, and that the federal government has been a part of that. And so we are owning up to our responsibility by trying to help communities figure out how they can best serve the people of their communities. So what we're doing with this rule is we are giving communities an opportunity to submit to us a plan of action. And once that plan is submitted to us, we're going to be as transparent as we can possibly be by putting it on our website. Now, if there is a problem in your community, all they'd have to do is dial 1-800-669-9777. That's 1-800-669-9777, and they can get help. But this rule is going to look at how we address housing writ large throughout this entire country. And I'm hopeful that people will take advantage of the opportunity to let their voices be heard by responding or giving a comment on this rule.
Okay, Department of Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.
Following yesterday's front, we are now left with some dry air as we finish off this work week. But your first alert to our next chances for rain, that is going to arrive as we're heading into this upcoming weekend. Not an all-day rain event for either one day, but better chances will be as we are heading into our Sunday. The reason being, we've got an area of low pressure that's going to develop and right along the Gulf Coast there, and we are going to see some moisture move in as a result of that. So really, most of your Saturday does look to be on the drier side. We'll start off with some sun. These clouds will fill in as we're heading into the afternoon. Notice by 5 o'clock, still looking at dry conditions. It may not be until closer towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night that we see a couple of isolated showers making their way into the mid-south, carrying over through the overnight into the early morning hours on Sunday. And as mentioned, not an all-day rain event. There will be some breaks and some dry air too. So just a few isolated showers by lunchtime on Sunday, with a better chance to see some isolated to scattered showers as we're heading into our Sunday afternoon, but tapering off by Sunday night. We'll briefly dry out as we're heading into Monday, the start of the new work week. We do have a better chance of rain as we're heading into the middle of the week. Our second round will move in on Tuesday. Notice by Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock or so, isolated to scattered showers. These will fill in throughout the day. In fact, Tuesday rain does look to be quite widespread, especially by the lunch hour heading into the afternoon. Notice by 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so on Tuesday afternoon, starting to see some of that rain taper off, but we could have some cool air that filters in behind it, cold enough where we could even see a couple of flurries on the backside of this system. Now, we're still several days out from this event, but I will say at this point, this type of setup, it doesn't look very promising. Most of us will not see anything, and I'm not expecting any major accumulations or impacts from that, but we could see some of those flurries, especially for areas north and along I-40 that continue Tuesday night into our Wednesday morning. So rainfall amounts all the way through Wednesday. Generally look to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so. That means I'm not looking at any sort of major flooding concerns, as we'll have that falls over the next several days. As mentioned, we are going to be rain free for today. We've got that cold front that has moved to the east of here. We've got a lot of sunshine in store for us today. It is going to be breezy. We've got these winds out of the west and southwest around 20-25 miles per hour this morning. We could see those wind gusts closer towards 30 miles per hour, especially late this morning and into the early afternoon. And those temperatures will keep us overall pretty seasonable, just slightly above the average. 58 degrees the high here in Memphis today, 54 in Brownsville, 55 in Alamo with 61 in Oxford, 57 in Marks with 51 in Wynne, and 52 in Marion. Now tonight it is going to be a chilly night, back into the 30s, which is where we're supposed to be for this time of year. Just a few clouds, mainly clear skies across the Mid-South. And as mentioned, we're looking at dry weather today and tomorrow, but we will see some rain chances this weekend, primarily on Sunday afternoon. Dry as we head into the start of next week for your Monday, but then more rain by Tuesday, carrying over into Wednesday. Generally will be pretty seasonable, meaning temperatures are right where they should be, with those highs into the 50s and overnight lows generally in the 30s.
All right, increasing pressure this morning on the city of Memphis and Memphis police to release the video of Tyre Nichols' traffic stop. He died 3 days after his encounter with police. Joyce Peterson now has the timeline for when his family will get to see the video and when it's expected to be released to the public.
The fight's just beginning.
Rovon and Rodney Wells buried their 29-year-old son, Tyre Nichols, just 1 day ago. And in 4 days, they will see the video that will show them what Memphis police did to their child during a January 7th traffic stop.
I will. I'm going to watch it, but I don't want to put her through that.
I'm not going to see somebody beat my son.
I really don't even want her in the room because I don't even want her to hear it.
The Wells and their lawyer, famed civil rights attorney Ben Crump, are scheduled to meet Monday with leaders from the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department.
They're following what is a playbook. When the police kill a person unjustly, especially a black person, normally they just delay.
Attorney Crump says he's encouraged by the fact MPD Chief C.J. Davis and city officials communicated with them Tuesday, agreeing to show them the video before the TBI completes its criminal investigation. Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland says the city's internal investigation ended Saturday. The officers will have a hearing by Friday to determine their employment status. He praised Chief Davis's handling of the incident.
She immediately called for the TBI to investigate. She's immediately started the employment review. The employment review is happening quicker and in a more transparent way than it's ever been handled before.
Little consolation for a family shattered. A heartbroken mother and father looking for justice for Tyre.
Any kid could be put in this situation. You don't have to be a gangster or a gangbanger or a car thief or anything like that to be put in this situation, which is horrible.
After I seen it, I just started saying, thank God. I'm thankful. I'm thankful. The car does not matter. I'm thankful because I would have been pinned in the car and the car had jumped over the curb.
It's a vehicle, it's not a life. And like I said, we were just out like 2 or 3 minutes and it happened. So we just started thinking about the officer that got hit by the young man, and we were just praying that he'll be all right.
Bartlett police say the officer involved was hospitalized after the crash. Officers did arrest the suspect. He is facing a slew of charges this morning. A new bill is being proposed that would keep Mississippians from filming police at certain distances when police officers are on the job. And if the bill passes, violators could face jail time. Our sister station in Jackson spoke with the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, who tells us why he believes the bill is important. Chris Fields has more.
Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindall says an incident with police in Macomb last year made it evident that a law must be passed here in the state to put more distance between people and police when recording law enforcement activity.
Look, you got to stand 15 foot back, and if you want to violate that, we're going to arrest you too.
Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindall says he's in full support of the House Bill 448, which is in committee right now. He says it would create a safety perimeter when law enforcement is working.
And one of the biggest issues we have now when there's an arrest or when there's even a basic traffic stop is individuals failing to follow basic compliance and instructions. And so I think it's one thing to say you need to back up, I need room. I think it's another thing when they can cite a state law that says you have to give me 15 feet.
The proposed bill prohibits a person who is not the subject of police contact from video recording law enforcement activity within a certain number of feet of the law enforcement officer, when the officer has given clear verbal instruction to the person to stand no less than 15 feet away from activity.
I think that's safe for the officer, it's safe for the person filming, and it's safe for the subject of any investigation.
Tindall says the bill was created after a traffic stop last year in Macomb involving Mississippi Highway Patrol and other individuals at a scene on Schmidt Road. Tindall says a man arrived on the scene, videoing law enforcement and yelling profane language.
They recognize that these situations could be volatile, and this was a great means by which we can educate the public to maintain a safe perimeter, and the officers have a guideline they can give them.
Madison County Representative Jill Ford introduced the bill. She sent through on your side this statement: "My intent for introducing this legislation is to protect everyone involved, the perpetrator, pedestrian, and patrolman."
Okay, that was Chris Fields reporting. The deadline for the bill to come out of committee is January 31st before it can be considered by the full House. If passed, it'll go to the Senate, and it'll get reviewed again, placed in a committee for review. Moving on now, Mississippi lawmakers are 2 weeks into the legislative session there. First major deadline just passed this week, the introduction of those general bills. One would require cameras to be installed in public school classrooms across the state. Several bills have also been filed that would allow for expanded early voting in Mississippi. And two other bills would allow for direct wine shipments to Mississippians and allow grocery stores to sell wine.
It's just bringing us in the 21st century, more or less, on as far as alcohol sales go. We need to get Mississippi out of the prohibition era. We're still prohibition states, so this is just a way to kind of egg that along, also to give the consumers more choices.
We will keep a close eye on all the bills the Mississippi legislative session has. We'll bring you updates on its progress. Okay, 4 major banks in the U.S., get this, reported 192,000 cases of fraud from customers who used the app Zelle in 2021 and the beginning of the year 2022. So that is not even including Venmo and PayPal and Cash App, but those are also areas where the BBB and some other consumer advocates are seeing all kinds of fraud cases. Out of those 192,000 cases of fraud, only about 3,500 of those customers got any kind of reimbursement for the amount of money they lost. So let's talk now about ways that you can protect yourself if you use one of these payment apps. Watch this. Tap and done. Payment apps like Zelle, Venmo, and Cash App make sending money to your friends or for purchases very easy and convenient. But is it safe?
Yeah, I would say yes, because I know that there's a lot of fraudulent activity that's happening. Hearing people get hacked.
According to Pew Research Center, about 1 in 10 people fall victim to payment app scams or hacking. About 47% of people were able to get their money back with PayPal. Very few people ever get their money back with other apps. With Venmo, only 14% get their money back, while it was 3.7% with Cash App and less than 1% with Zelle. So how can you protect your money? Well, first, only send money to people you know and trust. Also, double check to make sure the phone number or email address is correct. Connect your payment app to your credit card, not your bank account. Credit cards offer greater protections for authorized transactions than bank accounts. And finally, make sure you are the only one who can access the app by having a biometric passcode like a fingerprint. Another tip, if you do run into problems with your payment app, double check the customer service number. There have been reports of people searching the customer support number for Cash App on Google only to find out that the representative they are speaking to is a scammer. The BBB says Cash App support will also never ask for payment or sensitive information like your bank account information. You may also want to think twice before downloading any software the scammer may recommend if it's not tied to the Cash App. With ways to live your best life, I'm Andrew Douglas, Action News 5. Well, the party may be over at Party City, the nation's largest party goods and Halloween specialty retail chain, filed for bankruptcy protection this week. Company said that the filing had reached an agreement with debt holders to cut its $1.7 billion debt load. Comes after years of losses, weak sales online, retailers, big box chains cut into the market share. The emergence of Spirit Halloween, a pop-up store model, also took a lot of business from Party City. All right, bacon and sausage lovers, got some bad news for you here. The food additives that give these foods their color and tasty flavor could be causing type 2 diabetes. Well, a research firm in France found that nitrates and nitrites raise the risk of getting the metabolic disease. They found that those with a higher intake of nitrates, specifically from food additives, had a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Now, food producers commonly use these preservatives to increase shelf life in cured meats and other processed foods. They also keep meat from losing their red color while providing more flavor. A renewed warning about the dangers of COVID-19 during pregnancy. A large international study finds that pregnant women who get COVID at any point during their pregnancy are at greater risk of being admitted into intensive care and are more likely to die from the virus. Mandy Gaither has more on the research and what women can do to protect themselves.
New evidence that getting COVID-19 during pregnancy can have devastating effects.
This was a very large study, about 13,000 pregnant women, 12 countries, 12 studies all put together that they reviewed.
The research found that the pregnant people studied who got COVID-19 were nearly 4 times more likely to be admitted to an ICU, at 15 times greater risk of getting put on a ventilator, and 7 times more likely to die compared to those who were pregnant and not infected. There was also an increased risk of conditions like preeclampsia, hypertensive disorders, and blood clotting. Researchers found dangers for babies, too.
There was an increased risk of preterm birth, low birth weight, and getting admitted to a neonatal ICU.
Health experts say getting vaccinated is the best way to protect those pregnant and their babies. Right now, about 72% of pregnant people in the U.S. receive their first series. Only about 19% have gotten an updated booster.
The CDC, the American College of OBGYN, Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine all support the safety and the benefits of getting vaccinated during pregnancy at any point, getting your booster if you're eligible, and also if you're conceiving or planning on getting pregnant.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Stores. Mom and pop stores are more and more difficult to find these days, but there's one such store in Memphis that's been around for nearly 100 years. In her quest to highlight people, places, and things that make us proud to call the Mid-South home, Kim Clark takes us to Hollywood Furniture and Hardware.
This corner of Chelsea and Hollywood has been home to one family's entrepreneurial dream and business for 3 generations and at least 99 years.
1924 is when we actually started, and Hollywood was obviously at that time more of a rural community, wasn't really part of Memphis.
Mark Gary's grandparents, Roy and Irene Sanford, started the business.
And they started basically as a hardware store.
But due to the remoteness of the area back then, this community needed more than just a hardware store.
They needed to be able to sell appliances, stoves, refrigerators, and then, mattresses, and so it just kind of grew for the need.
Then the second generation of the family came along, and years later, the Sanford's daughter, Marilyn, and her husband, Burl Gary, joined the business.
Yeah, it was really busy. Of course, back in the day, there were so many factories out here, and there was so much going on.
With both parents working the store, Leslie Gary and her siblings practically grew up there.
I grew up following both my grandfathers around, you know, at the farm, and loved to know how to fix stuff and loved to be helping in the middle of all that. And so I love the hardware part.
Had a tricycle out here, riding up and down the aisles. My kids are all grown now, obviously, and did the same thing.
And just like the growing family, the business grew as well.
You know, the old Hollywood Theater was next door. When it was torn down, we purchased that property. There used to be a drugstore on the corner. We purchased that property. There used to be a Cleaners around the corner. We purchased that property. So we've been able to expand right here.
Bart began working at the store about 40 years ago, bringing with him an idea that would give the business its unique identity.
And I saw that there was a need for this French and Victorian style furniture. Even though we still carried everything else, we really got to where we were heavy into that, and we became a destination point for that, and still are to this day.
Leslie started in 1986, thinking she'd stay only a year until she got her business degree.
You know, God always paves the way, and God puts you where you need to be, and through the years, it's been such a blessing. You know, so many wonderful people, and yeah, it's just really been wonderful.
Wonderful people like Jacqueline Loverson, a customer at Hollywood Furniture for roughly 30 years, starting when she bought her first living room set and beds for her children.
I mean, they just like family. I mean, they will help you, you know.
And Jonathan Washington, who said he's been coming to the store a couple of times a week for about 10 years now.
They're pretty good people. I hate they closing on me.
Deciding whether or not to close has been an agonizing decision for the Garys.
It's just time. I mean, I'm healthy. My sister is healthy, Leslie, and you know, I'm at the age now where, you know, I want to enjoy my grandkids and, you know, not be working all the time. And the great thing about it is we're doing it on our time.
It's just, I hope so many people come by and see us. I've been making a list for a long time of all the people I need to call that have shopped here and just may not have been here lately. And I would hate for somebody to drive up in March or April and go, oh, the Garys are gone and they didn't tell us.
Hollywood Furniture and Hardware, family run and community minded, making us proud that it's called this place home for nearly a century. Kim Clark, Action News 5.
Let's talk a little bit about weight loss, because there's so many different options out there, and one of those options is bariatric surgery, and that is certainly an option that many people entertain each and every year. I'm joined now by Dr. Matthew Davis, a bariatric surgeon with Methodist Medical Group, to talk a little bit about this surgery and other weight loss programs. Dr. Davis, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing? Doing well.
I'm doing well, thanks. I appreciate you taking a few minutes here. This time of year, my understanding is that you receive a lot of calls about various weight loss options available, and we understand that the southern states have the highest prevalence of obesity in the country. Is this something that that people should consider? My understanding is that it's such an overwhelmingly serious surgery that you really need to consider several factors when you go and consider this option. Am I right with that?
Well, I would say serious as in its degree of importance for each and every patient. You know, it is a serious step. You know, some people take a little bit longer than others. You know, the average patient researches and reads up on bariatric surgery for 2 years before they really come to that decision. But serious, not in a scary or dangerous way. You know, we have great data out there to show this is just as safe as your average gallbladder surgery, which everyone knows someone who's had one. And definitely the impact that it has, the positive impact on your life, far outweighs the potential for risk.
So let's talk a little bit about what that surgery entails. Many people hear bariatric surgery, they don't know what it means. Explain it for us.
Sure. So, you know, bariatric surgery has been around for over 50 years, I would say, in one form or another. But really, in the past 20 years or so, we've really honed it. We've really been able to get a lot of momentum. We're doing several 100,000 surgeries a year nationally. The surgeries essentially entail either, you know, making the stomach smaller to accommodate less food, or rearranging the intestine in a way that you're absorbing less of what you do eat, or a combination of both. There's many different permutations. The most common ones that people know about are the gastric sleeve, and the gastric bypass. Those are kind of the most prevalent, most common that you see across the United States. And it's not just shrinking the stomach to make you eat less, but rather it's when the stomach is shrunk, the physiology, what goes on the inside, when you do eat, even the small amount you do eat changes. So it's kind of profound. It's not really just about weight loss. It's about how it impacts the metabolic pathways in the body. Some of our patients will walk out of the hospital the day after surgery. They haven't lost any weight yet, but they're already starting to see improvements in their diabetes, in their blood pressure, things that are associated with their weight. So there's more to it than just, not eating as much, because the common barrier, the common thing that people come up against when they're dealing with weight loss is a lot of people say just eat less, and that's definitely not the source of the problem. We shrink the stomach, people are eating less, but there's more to it than just the volume of food, the volume of calories.
There are some times, Dr. Davis, when I see someone that has gotten the surgery and they lose a bunch of weight, and then over time, I feel like they gained a lot of it back. What's the success rate of the bariatric surgery?
So about 80% of patients will lose their weight successfully and keep that weight off long term. What are we talking about successfully? We're talking about 30% of your total body weight. So someone who's, say, 300 pounds, losing about 100 pounds of weight loss over the first year or so, and then maintaining that long term. Yes, about 1 in 5 patients may experience some weight recurrence, where the weight comes back a little bit in either a small amount, and only a very small amount of patients will have more, but that's something we've been seeing in the past. And honestly, that's really been associated with how well you're following up with your surgeon, how well you're educated, how well you're keeping compliant. And that's really something we do here at our program here at Methodist, is we see our patients multiple times in that first year, yearly. We're always available for them. We have dietitians on staff. We have a medical weight loss specialist who could incorporate a weight loss medication. So many different options to keep, tight contact with our patients, to give them the support they need afterwards. We even have a Facebook group for our patients to share stories with each other, and the little things here and there to be able to say, hey, where can you find the best protein shake? Or, hey, I'm having a rough day, let's get some support. And really we found that our success and the success of our patients has really improved with all these sort of multimodal therapies.
So, Dr. Davis, it's interesting you mentioned that support group, because it kind of goes into my next question. I know some of these people that have gotten bariatric surgery, they lose a bunch of weight, and suddenly for the first time, whether they're male or female, they get a lot of attention from the opposite sex, and they're going out more, and they're drinking more, and some turn in and they have these bad habits, these habits of whether it's, an excessive amount of alcohol or drugs or what have you, and because they've tend to be these party animals, and you see situations where the person, either if they are involved in a family or they're married, they're suddenly divorced and they're going out all the time, and they develop these horrible habits. What do you do to kind of limit those side effects to make sure that when someone does get the surgery, that they don't fall into this trap of over excess of everything?
That's very interesting. We talk about that with some patients. There's a concept called addiction transference, that some people, in their journey through obesity are addicted to food, which is, it hits the same parts of the brain that sometimes alcohol and drugs. And we see that transfer, that once you're not eating as much, you have to find another outlet for that. Now, that's definitely not, that's definitely the minority of patients. But I think a lot of what we do to get our patients ready for surgery, it does incorporate psychological screening to tease out these sort of issues and deal with them on the front end before they get the surgery. And we have that support for them afterwards. And these are things, again, that as we see our patients on a constant basis, we can pick up on these sort of ideas. We don't just kind of let them go and then come back a year later and maybe they're dealing with an issue. We see this also with patients who unfortunately suffer a loss or an illness in the family, where they get their attention diverted away from their own well-being. So we really need to make sure that we have that close contact with the patient and have the resources available so they can avoid these sort of things.
You know, it's just we're having this conversation. There's so much more involved in the actual surgery. There is prep work beforehand. There's the surgery, and then the post surgery, and how to cope with the different changes. Are there non-surgical weight loss options that your office kind of goes through with patients?
Most definitely. So we offer really the whole gamut of weight management resources, from just medical support of a physician, support of a dietitian, medications that induce weight loss we have what's known as our bariatrician. She's an internal medicine doctor, Dr. Lee Daigle, and she sees patients from the non-surgical side of things. She can take a look at you top to bottom, look at all your medical issues, maybe manage some of the medications that may be adding to your weight that you're already taking, and then add in a new weight loss medication, of which more and more are coming out. Month to month, we're seeing new ones. Usually they get approved for diabetics and they kind of transfer over to the non-diabetic population. But we're seeing that gap being bridged where the medications are coming close to the effect of surgery. But ultimately, surgery is our gold standard. It's going to get you the most amount of weight off. It's going to keep your weight off long term with the most success, as well as improve things like diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, all those medical issues that are surrounding your weight. The other, major, news cycle sort of thing recently came out. JAMA, the American Medical Association's journal, published a very, very solid study from the Cleveland Clinic that showed a significant decrease in cancer occurrence, cancer incidence after bariatric surgery. That the impact of the weight loss, especially on gynecological cancers, endometrial cancer, breast cancer, as well as multiple different abdominal cancers that are related to weight. And we're seeing significant improvement in both the occurrence of the first-time cancer, as well as if you were to suffer from cancer, the recurrence of cancer coming back after that significant weight loss.
Dr. Davis, I hear a lot of people go to Mexico, for example, to do this surgery. Is it that much more expensive here to get it done as opposed to going to a different country?
So, I'll tell you that the insurance coverage is a barrier that we deal with really nationally. It's not just a local problem. The self-pay option is still more here than it is there. But I definitely discourage anyone who discusses this with me from going there. There are some excellent surgeons in Mexico, of which I've met some. But these programs that kind of do medical tourism that bring people over, unfortunately, it's been shown as a risk factor for complications after surgery. I personally have had to revise a few patients who've suffered complications, even very dire complications. There was some patient who was quite sick that we had to take care of. So that's definitely not necessarily the way to go. I would encourage people to speak with their insurance providers and figure out avenues, even from a non-surgical pathway first, to get started. But even from a surgical pathway, call our office, we have 2 insurance advocates on staff here who could potentially navigate or at least advise you as to which insurances are available to get the coverage, as well as some self-pay options.
How much is the surgery, if you don't mind me asking?
That's really not part of my job, but I would ballpark about $25,000 from the insurance. I think there's some deal making with regards to a self-pay option, but approximately that much. But, really in my mind, looking at it long term, this is a surgery that could last 20, 30, there are 60 years. There are some patients that are 20 or 30 years old that are getting the surgery, and it's lasting that long. So the investment over time, as well as the cost of medical care for things like diabetes as it worsens down the road with weight, far exceeds that. And these are ongoing conversations that we have on kind of a higher level with the insurance companies, that they may not want to pay for it now, but long term they're going to be paying more. So these are bridges that we're trying to build. In fact, the state education system in Arkansas has just approved bariatric surgery for state employees. So we're making improvements there and trying to get more coverage.
This has been fascinating, Dr. Davis. You've really given us kind of an in-depth look at that. What is the, I guess you would consider, what is the ideal candidate for bariatric surgery? It's not someone that just wants to lose, 10, 20 pounds. I mean, this is something give us an idea of who an ideal candidate is.
Well, so, anyone can go onto Google and just type in BMI calculator. If you put in your height and your weight, it'll spit out a number for you, your BMI. If it's above 35, 30 is where we start classifying patients as obese. 35 is already the realm of surgery, where surgery will make that positive impact in your life. Now, anyone at any point can see us for any sort of weight management, but I would say the ideal candidate is anyone with a BMI above 35 who's struggling with their weight, trying to get it off. It's just not working with, whether it's dieting, even if they're taking a medication. Definitely, if you're struggling with weight-related medical issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, but even things that are not directly associated, joint disease, people are carrying around more weight than their joints can take. I just had a patient come in yesterday who lost about 80 pounds after surgery. He says, it's like I'm not carrying, my dog around with me all day, and my back is so much happier for it. So these sort of things. And then we really have to look beyond that at quality of life. Some people, we have older patients who have grandkids who just can't get on the floor and play with their grandkids. And after they have the surgery, that impact, they haven't seen a change in, let's say, a medical issue, but that impact in their life is so impactful for them. And it really gives them the satisfaction of going through it. And, the one thing I hear from so many of my patients is I should have done this earlier. And, thank you for opening my eyes. And that's the job satisfaction that I have, seeing that smile and that look on the patient even 6 months after surgery.
Dr. Davis, you've explained so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we let you go?
The newest thing that we are trying to put out there for Methodist, we have just been approved for our Institute of Excellence at Methodist University Hospital. So this is national recognition by the society that takes care of all bariatric surgery to recognize Methodist University as the highest level of care for bariatric patients. Methodist Germantown already has this, so now our whole system-wide is certified as an Institute of Excellence to show, we have been doing this excellent care, providing excellent care for weight management for patients for the past 4 years, but we have achieved that recognition, and we really work really hard to make sure that we can impact not just the Memphis area, but really the Mid-South region, which is, like you mentioned at the beginning, one of the most stricken with obesity at this time. And we really hope to be able to reach out to patients near and far to give them the opportunity they need to improve their life through improving their weight.
Okay, Dr. Matthew Davis, bariatric surgeon with Methodist Medical Group. Thanks so very much. We appreciate you explaining it all for us.
Well, have a nice day. Thank you very much for the talk.
Following yesterday's front, we are now left with some dry air as we finish off this work week. But your first alert to our next chances for rain, that is going to arrive as we're heading into this upcoming weekend. Not an all-day rain event for either one day, but better chances will be as we are heading into our Sunday. The reason being, we've got an area of low pressure that's going to develop and right along the Gulf Coast there, and we are going to see some moisture move in as a result of that. So really, most of your Saturday does look to be on the drier side. We'll start off with some sun. These clouds will fill in as we're heading into the afternoon. Notice by 5 o'clock, still looking at dry conditions. It may not be until closer towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night that we see a couple of isolated showers making their way into the Mid-South, carrying over through the overnight into the early morning hours on Sunday. And as mentioned, not an all-day rain event. There will be some breaks and some dry air too. So just a few isolated showers by lunchtime on Sunday, with a better chance to see some isolated to scattered showers as we're heading into our Sunday afternoon, but tapering off by Sunday night. We'll briefly dry out as we're heading into Monday, the start of the new work week. We do have a better chance of rain as we're heading into the middle of the week. Our second round will move in on Tuesday. Notice by Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock or so, isolated to scattered showers. These will fill in throughout the day. In fact, Tuesday rain does look to be quite widespread, especially by the lunch hour heading into the afternoon. Notice by 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so on Tuesday afternoon, starting to see some of that rain taper off, but we could have some cool air that filters in behind it, cold enough where we could even see a couple of flurries on the backside of this system. Now, we're still several days out from this event, but I will say at this point, this type of setup, it doesn't look very promising. Most of us will not see anything, and I'm not expecting any major accumulations or impacts from that, but we could see some of those flurries, especially for areas north and along I-40 that continue Tuesday night into our Wednesday morning. So rainfall amounts all the way through Wednesday. Generally look to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so. That means I'm not looking at any sort of major flooding concerns, as we'll have that falls over the next several days. As mentioned, we are going to be rain-free for today. We've got that cold front that has moved to the east of here. We've got a lot of sunshine in store for us today. It is going to be breezy. We've got these winds out of the west and southwest around 20-25 miles per hour this morning. We could see those wind gusts closer towards 30 miles per hour, especially late this morning and into the early afternoon. And those temperatures will keep us overall pretty seasonable, just slightly above the average. 58 degrees the high here in Memphis today, 54 in Brownsville, 55 in Alamo with 61 in Oxford, 57 in Marks with 51 in Wynne, and 52 in Marion. Now tonight it is going to be a chilly night, back into the 30s, which is where we're supposed to be for this time of year. Just a few clouds, mainly clear skies across the Mid-South. And as mentioned, we're looking at dry weather today and tomorrow, but we will see some rain chances this weekend, primarily on Sunday afternoon. Dry as we head into the start of next week for your Monday, but then more rain by Tuesday, carrying over into Wednesday. Generally will be pretty seasonable, meaning temperatures are right where they should be, with those highs into the 50s.
All right, caught on camera, a string of robberies at a fast food restaurants around Memphis. Take a look at this video here. Memphis police looking for this guy. Monday night, he went to various drive-through windows across the city. You can see him here reach into the window with a gun in his hand, steal the tray from the register, and drive off. If you have any information, please call or text Crime Stoppers anonymously, 901-528-CASH. Memphis police also looking for 3 people accused of assaulting a man at his home. These images are from surveillance video that was taken on the property of Holmesdale area. That's last Tuesday. Detectives say the victim came home to see 3 people trying to break into his niece's car. When he honked his horn at them, police say 2 of the men began shooting at the victim before fleeing in a Chrysler 300. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Okay, from changes to the state's abortion trigger law to upgrades to Memphis sports arenas. Our Bria Bolden has more on Tennessee's legislative session.
Tennessee lawmakers from all over are back in the capital city for a new legislative session. House leaders for Democrats and Republicans tell Action News 5 they're looking to tackle big things for the state and the city of Memphis.
It's always going to be an uphill battle with some of the legislation we deal with, but it's always great to work for the citizens.
One big ticket item, changing the state's abortion trigger law to allow the exception to save the life of a pregnant woman. Both Republican House Leader Cameron Sexton and Democrat House Minority Leader Karen Camper agreeing that an exception needs to be put in, among others.
We also need to talk about the affirmative defense clause that's in there that basically says a physician is guilty and has to prove their innocence instead of being proven guilty. We need to change that.
Also on the minds of lawmakers on both sides, Mayor Jim Strickland's $684 million plan to improve FedEx Forum, Simmons Liberty Bank Stadium, AutoZone Park, and a new soccer stadium for 901 FC.
We're supporting the mayor at this point and trying to get this, sports tourism thing going down in the city of Memphis. And it's going to be great regionally as well.
The city is asking the state to front $350 million of that plan. Sexton says the easiest part is renovations for Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium and FedEx Forum, leaving the chances higher for the Memphis Tigers to be contenders for a Power 5 conference.
It would help Memphis. It would help Tennessee. So I think hopefully those things are easy. A new soccer stadium, we'll continue to look at it. Hopefully we can keep it in and fight for it to get it there to help as we go. But I think it's an important package, and we've been working well with the mayor on it.
Shelby County Democrats are also pushing for more funding for TBI analysts and a quicker process for testing sexual assault kits within 30 days.
We're forward thinking and, trying to get at it before it becomes an issue. We need the appropriate level of funding, and it needs to be a priority for this administration.
Now let's talk about an important issue that affects all Americans, right? Because we know that there's 2 guarantees in life, death and taxes. And certainly these tax returns this year is going to be a doozy. There's going to be a lot of changes. So we got to go to our expert here, Mark Stever, Tax Information Officer with Jackson Hewitt, always in the know when it comes to this stuff. I saw Mark kind of laughing there as I was introing him. How are you, Mark? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Very exciting time for all Americans. It's tax refund time.
Tax refund time. Certainly some changes this coming year for these tax returns for 2022. Tell us some of the big changes people need to watch for.
Yeah, it may seem like it was not a year of big change because there was not a lot of media on tax law changes and that year-end bill fizzled, but there are a lot of tax law changes. We call it the year of the great tax reset. A lot of the benefits that were put into place for the pandemic, increased child credit, dependent care credit, earned income credit, being able to deduct charitable donations if you don't itemize, all of those expired last year at the end of 2021. So they're not in place for 2022, and that could cause lower refunds for some taxpayers and may have some tax refund shock or tax refund risk of shock if you're not careful. So it's probably a good idea to pay extra close attention to your taxes this year and get after it a little bit earlier than you might have in the past.
Okay, so let's walk through it just kind of step by step here. Let's talk about first the changes you mentioned, the child tax credit in 2022.
Well, for 2021, it was about $2,000, up to about $1,400 was refundable. Jump ahead to 2022. Or 2021, pardon me, the government changed the bill to allow $3,600 per young child and all of it refundable. Well, at the end of 2021, that expired, so it's not in place for 2022. It's back to that original amount, $2,000. And that's just one example. So if you had child tax credit last year or dependent care credits last year or earned income credit and you were single last year, you got a much bigger refund last year. Those won't be in place for this tax return, and it could result in a lower refund. Now, there's still great benefits, and they're still there. They'll just be a lot different. So I would tell your viewers this. Don't use last year's tax return as your absolute guide for what to expect this year. Life changes and pandemic changes notwithstanding, the tax changes reverted back to prior pandemic amounts.
Okay, what about the child and dependent care credit change?
Similar to the earned income credit, it was double, tripled, and made fully refundable in 2021. And then that expired in 2022 and was not updated. So it's back to the pre-pandemic amount. Now, if you do have children that were in daycare so you could work, or you and your spouse could work, or summer camp even, you still have a nice big credit. It's just not as big as the 2021 size credit was.
Sorry about that, Mark. Those who are self-employed, what kind of changes are they looking at?
Well, there's still some great benefits if you're self-employed, full or part-time, have a side gig. The big one we've seen, and it continues to be big, the home office deduction. It's available if you're self-employed, full, or even part-time, or even if your spouse is. Not available if you're an employee. And there's a host of other deductions from travel, cell phone, computer, marketing, pocket expenses, out-of-pocket expenses, lunches, materials. All of those can go in to reduce your taxable income from your side gig and make your return on your activity a little bit better. So if you have side gig income, and a lot of people have since the pandemic, make sure either you understand what all the rules and deductions and options are, or your tax pro does, and keep really good records, because every deduction reduces your taxes and can increase your tax refund.
A lot of people are going to be wondering if they can still write off their charitable donations this year. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's one of those ones that you could during 2021 at the height of the pandemic law changes. It expired in 2022. You still get a nice, healthy charitable donation for cash to your church, your mosque, or your synagogue, and even the fair market value of stuff that you donate. Unfortunately, it's only available if you itemize. In America, you either get the standard deduction, or if larger, the itemized deductions, mortgage interest, property taxes, and charitable donation, among the many. And you have to be an itemizer to take charitable donations. People still do, but not as big as the option was in 2021 when you didn't even have to itemize to take that. But again, that one expired last year, not here this year. So when you go doing your taxes, don't look at last year's return as your roadmap for what to do. A good tax pro will know, but other people might make a mistake.
What about the earned income tax credit? Any changes in this year?
Well, it's one of the most overlooked tax credits. 1 in 5 people fail to take advantage of it. First, the good news, it's still in place. It's still a $6,000 plus maximum credit if you have 3 or more dependents. Unfortunately, for last year, like some of those other rules, if you were single, they tripled the amount of the earned income credit up to about $1,500. That, like those others, expired at the end of 2021. But it's still a nice credit. It's still a credit for moderate and middle income taxpayers that have earnings, and it's one that's often overlooked. So if you're not sure if you get the earned income credit, like a lot of the others, education credit, dependent care credit, and more, make sure you talk to a qualified, trained, and experienced tax professional to make sure you get all those credits. Because if there's one thing besides death and taxes like you open, if you leave it off your tax return, it stays off your tax return. The IRS is not in the business of making sure you get all your benefits. Only you and a tax pro, if you use one, can do that.
Okay, and finally, will there be more stimulus checks or recovery rebate credit this time?
Certainly does not seem to be in the play right now. They floated that idea last year a little bit. It never really caught traction. So I don't think you'll see one of those big stimulus payment checks like the $1,400 and the others. Now, some states are doing it, and they're creating a little bit of confusion on how you get it. Is it automatic? But in large part, there will be no stimulus on the 22 tax return. But a lot of other things still are. I go back to the credits we talked about, deductions we talked about, other benefits that if you look to your tax return, and more importantly, life changes that you had during the year, got married, got divorced, had a new dependent, taking care of a dependent parent, all of those can add to your tax return, tax refund, and they're not as big as tax law changes in the way of publicity. So if you had something big happen in your life, gone back to work full-time, self-employed, sidebar, side gig, make sure you tell your tax pro you may be sitting on some other boosters for your tax refund this year.
Mark, this has been so good. You've given us so much information out there. Where can people find that information online?
Well, any good tax company has a good website, jacksonhewitt.com. We have videos, tax tips, checklists to get started. You can put your zip code in and find an office near you. Make an appointment if you don't just want to walk in. A lot of things on our website at jacksonhewitt.com. But it's important to know next Monday is when IRS really starts processing tax refunds. So there's no reason to wait. Your documents are coming in. Get that shoebox envelope ready. File early, get your money early. You don't have to be Warren Buffett to know that makes sense. And you can start as early as today, but it'll start filing with the IRS on Monday.
And the deadline this year is April 18th, right?
That's correct. The 15th is on a weekend, and anytime it's on the weekend, it falls to the following Monday, which would ordinarily be April 17th, except that this year, that's Emancipation Day, a national holiday in Washington, D.C., so it moves to the next day. So you have a couple of extra days, April 18th, to file your taxes. But again, there is no good reason to wait. 3 out of 4 people get a refund every year. We expect that this year. File early, get your money. File early, lock up your data with the IRS in case one of those schemers has stolen your name and your social or your spouse. So file early, get your money. File early, lock up your data. And most importantly, file early in case you have new questions that come up from all the stuff we talked about. You don't want to be up against that midnight hour on the 18th looking for records for your side gig income. You want to do it early for all the right reasons, mostly because if you do money, you get the money. And even more importantly, if you owe taxes, and here's a big secret for your viewers, if you file early and you still don't have to write that check or debit card or checking account until April 18th at midnight. So filing early is separate from paying early. You can pay later.
Okay, Tax Information Officer, the Chief Tax Information Officer for Jackson Hewitt, Mark Stever. Mark, I always love chopping it up with you when it comes to taxes, what to watch for, what to not include or include this year. You spell it out so perfectly. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. I want to show you this. This is the latest cover of the Memphis Magazine January edition there. Look at that pretty color. And vibrant there. The wedding album, Memphis Marriages in Photos. Good stuff there. Let's talk more about what's inside this edition with Chris McCoy, a writer with Memphis Magazine and the Memphis Flyer. Chris, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year. I'm doing fine. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you very much. Read the article that you wrote here, this one, about your little trip to the Gulf. You got the best job here doing all these trips all over the place. And wow, the Gulf Coast didn't disappoint, huh?
No, I can't complain. But so a few years ago, back in 2020, before the pandemic, my wife often goes with me on these trips as a photographer, and she has been doing it for years. I've been doing travel writing since, 2006, 2000-ish or so. And so a lot of times she'll go and take pictures. And in early 2020, we were supposed to go to the Gulf Coast for a travel story, and her other job, she couldn't go. She couldn't go to that one because her other job, which is a video and film editor, she had a gig pop up, so she couldn't go. So then the pandemic happens, and we're stuck in the house for 2 years, and we don't get to travel. And the whole time we were like, man, I wish you could have gone on that trip, because right before the pandemic, I wish you could have gone. So the opportunity arose again. And this time, the stars aligned, and she was able to go on this trip. And we stayed at the Henderson. We stayed at the Henderson Park Inn in Destin, and it's right next to the Henderson State Park. And Travel and Leisure voted it the most romantic hotel in America, I think back in 2017 or 2018. And so I was like, well, since we're going to do the weddings for our cover story, which made a beautiful cover, let's talk a little bit about how to make a romantic trip between a couple. This seemed like a good, use of our time. So that's what we did. We tried to go and check out a lot of stuff at the beach in Destin and on the Gulf Coast. We tried to figure out if it was romantic or not, if it was a good thing to do with your partner. And in order to do this, we had to figure out what that meant when we said romantic, right? So that's why I called the story A Theory of Romance. We had to figure out what romantic was before we figured out if something was romantic or not. We had to get our definition down. So some of the story is about us trying to figure out, what does romantic mean, really? And the way the story came together is me proposing things and my wife's name is Laura Jean Hawking, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. For Laura Jean for us to do together. And then she would be like, is that romantic or not? And then she would decide, what it was. But I'll tell you, staying at the Henderson, at the Park Inn, there's the Henderson Park Inn, which is a small B&B on the beach. And then there is the Henderson Resort, which is a 110-room, high rise that's on the same property, but it's set back from the beach. And it also has like a 10,000 square foot spa and stuff, 2 pools, 3 restaurants. It's the full resort experience. So you get to use some of that if you stay in the Henderson. So, we did a couple spa thing there, which we've decided was extremely romantic. When we arrived at the Henderson, they had love spelled out in rose petals on the bed, which we also decided was extremely romantic, and for obvious reasons. But it turned into a really great trip. And the definition of romance that we ended up with, the theory of romance that we ended up with, was it needs to be an activity that allows you to be present with your partner. It allows you to shut out the world and just be there with the person that you love and concentrate on. That's why, for example, miniature golf turned out to be really romantic because we were able to just concentrate on each other and have a good time. So anyways, I think the story ended up being really fun. And, I'm really happy that we did it. And I hope that it helps some folks, go and have a romantic trip and improve their relationships.
I love your explanation about it, Chris. That was spot on, and we don't want to give too much of it away because we want people to pick up the magazine and look through it. And in addition to your writing, Chris, some great pictures that I guess your wife took, Laura took along the way that really kind of makes everything come to life in that article. So nice, and I really enjoyed it. What about the local wedding photographs here? Because we see the cover right here, which is a beautiful cover. Lots of colors, and then the article about various local weddings. Tell me more about this.
Well, we went around to all the wedding photographers that we could find and we could think of who might have some good stuff, and we started from there. We were like, show us some of your best pics, your best images that you think would be good for the magazine, that would be publishable. And then, you know, we worked outwards from there. And it turns out there's a lot of good photographers in this city, which is something that really working for Memphis Magazine has shown me. But, you know, a lot of them, that's what they do, you know, to make ends meet. They go and photograph weddings. So you can have some really great talent, you know, shooting you on the most important day of your life, you know, and it helps out a lot of photographers who are artists in their other lives. But, you know, they do fantastic work. And I think they just did a great job sourcing all these photographs and finding, you know, the right ones. But I do believe the one thing that story shows is that if you're going to get married in Memphis and you need a photographer, you're in good hands, because we got some good folks here.
Absolutely, totally agree here. And again, this is all on the cover of the first issue of the year for Memphis Magazine. There you can see the wedding album, Memphis Marriages in photos there. Again, the January edition of Memphis Magazine. Before we let you go, Chris, anything else you want to mention?
Hey, thank you for having me, and Happy New Year. We got some good stuff for the magazine coming up in the new year. I mentioned photography, and our February issue focuses on photographers. So you know, once you've devoured the January issue, that's what you have to look forward to.
Well, I look forward to it. I can't wait to get it in the mail, my January edition. Look forward to each and every time it comes in the mail. Chris McCoy, we appreciate you spending time with us each and every time you do. Thanks for all the hard work. Much success to you in 2023. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Same to you.
Following yesterday's front, we are now left with some dry air as we finish off this work week. But your first alert to our next chances for rain, that is going to arrive as we're heading into this upcoming weekend. Not an all-day rain event for either one day, but better chances will be as we are heading into our Sunday. The reason being, we've got an area of low pressure that's going to develop and right along the Gulf Coast there, and we are going to see some moisture move in as a result of that. So really, most of your Saturday does look to be on the drier side. We'll start off with some sun. These clouds will fill in as we're heading into the afternoon. Notice by 5 o'clock, still looking at dry conditions. It may not be until closer towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night that we see a couple of isolated showers making their way into the mid-south, carrying over through the overnight into the early morning hours on Sunday. And as mentioned, not an all-day rain event. There will be some breaks and some dry air too. So just a few isolated showers by lunchtime on Sunday, with a better chance to see some isolated to scattered showers as we're heading into our Sunday afternoon, but tapering off by Sunday night. We'll briefly dry out as we're heading into Monday, the start of the new work week. We do have a better chance of rain as we're heading into the middle of the week. Our second round will move in on Tuesday. Notice by Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock or so, isolated to scattered showers. These will fill in throughout the day. In fact, Tuesday rain does look to be quite widespread, especially by the lunch hour heading into the afternoon. Notice by 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so on Tuesday afternoon, starting to see some of that rain taper off, but we could have some cool air that filters in behind it, cold enough where we could even see a couple of flurries on the backside of this system. Now, we're still several days out from this event, but I will say at this point, this type of setup, it doesn't look very promising. Most of us will not see anything, and I'm not expecting any major accumulations or impacts from that, but we could see some of those flurries, especially for areas of north and along I-40 that continue Tuesday night into our Wednesday morning. So rainfall amounts all the way through Wednesday generally look to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so. That means I'm not looking at any sort of major flooding concerns, as we'll have that falls over the next several days. As mentioned, we are going to be rain-free for today. We've got that cold front that has moved to the east of here. We've got a lot of sunshine in store for us today. It is going to be breezy. We've got these winds out of the west and southwest around 20, 25 miles per hour this morning. We could see those wind gusts closer towards 30 miles per hour, especially late this morning and into the early afternoon. And those temperatures will keep us overall pretty seasonable, just slightly above the average. 58 degrees the high here in Memphis today, 54 in Brownsville, 55 in Alamo with 61 in Oxford, 57 in Marks with 51 in Wynn, and 52 in Marion. Now tonight it is going to be a chilly night, back into the 30s, which is where we're supposed to be for this time of year. Just a few clouds, mainly clear skies across the Mid-South. And as mentioned, we're looking at dry weather today and and tomorrow. But we will see some rain chances this weekend, primarily on Sunday afternoon. Dry as we head into the start of next week for your Monday, but then more rain by Tuesday, carrying over into Wednesday. Generally will be pretty seasonable, meaning temperatures are right where they should be, with those highs into the 50s and overnight lows generally in the 30s.
All right, so Hugh Jackman, Kourtney Kardashian, Jennifer Aniston, J-Lo, Elon Musk, just a few of the people that swear by intermittent fasting. Is it really safe? How do you actually know you're doing intermittent fasting? What will it do for you? Would it help you reach your health goals in 2023? Let's bring in Dr. Amy Duffy here. She is the international best-selling author of Normal Doesn't Have Side Effects, and she has been a part of the Action News 5 digital desk in the past. We appreciate you coming on once again, Amy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I'm so excited to be here and share this information. It's super fun.
Yeah, I am a person that loves to intermittent fast myself. I do it at work, and I have kind of like a, 10 to 12 hour window. First, explain what it is for our audience out there, and some of the different ways, because there's all kinds of different ways, I guess, to define intermittent fasting, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of ways. I kind of narrow it down to two different ways when I'm talking to my patients. I have the calendar way and I have the clock way. So the calendar way, this makes it a little bit more easy to process. Pick 2 days of the week, make sure they're not 2 days in a row. And on the 2 days that you X out here, you're going to fast those 2 days. On the other days, you can eat like normal. You can also adjust this different weeks throughout the month. So let's say you got a hot date one night, you want to adjust your time or something going on at work. So this way, it's super easy. A little bit more difficult to fast for a whole day. A lot of people start with something more like the clock way. So you're going to pick a time frame, a window, just like you described, where you're eating, and then a window where you're fasting or not eating. So let's imagine that you're going to start eating at noon and you're going to stop eating at 6 p.m. and then you don't resume eating until noon the next day. This makes it super easy because you're focused more on when you're eating and not just what you're eating. So you don't have to count carbs. You don't have to count calories. You want to have a glass of wine? Let's have a glass of wine. How about a beer? Sure, have a beer. Or you can even eat your favorite chocolate. Now, you're going to get better results for weight loss and overall health, cardiovascular, reducing the risk of diabetes, etc. if you're going to choose healthier foods, right? So eat your apple, have a salad for that meal. But it really is super simple and easy to follow. I get a lot of questions, Dr. Duffy, is this safe for us to do? And intermittent fasting can be really safe. In fact, we're seeing a lot of data. That's why doctors are loving it, that it really works, not just for weight loss, for actually reducing our risk of disease. So it's very safe, and we're really recommending it to a lot of people. The few people who need to pay attention, if you're diabetic and you're monitoring your blood sugar with either a blood sugar monitor, like when you're checking your blood on your finger, or you have one of those continuous glucose monitors, you want to make sure you talk to your doctor about that. This may be something you need to adjust. Or perhaps you're on medication and that medication needs to be taken with food, then you need to pay attention to the timing there or chat with your doctor about that. Outside of that, intermittent fasting, super safe, really easy to follow, and it works. That's why it's the #1 fad diet in America.
Is it really #1? Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. #1 fad diet in America. Gotcha. Let's get into specifics about the best candidates for intermittent fasting. Is there a certain body type? What about age groups?
Kids are growing, so we certainly don't want to restrict them. Usually kids are eating more for natural hunger, as opposed to sometimes we just want to eat because we're feeling munchy or something like that. So probably you want to wait until they're older teenagers or adults before they start fasting. But kids will actually naturally fast. They just don't eat when they're not hungry, right? So that's okay, age-wise. As we get older, really, there's no age limit where you would not want to intermittent fast. So that's pretty easy to do. Really, every body type is great. And one of the best things about intermittent fasting, it's not like the keto diet. Keto is okay, and you're going to get results from that, but it's really short-lived. It's hard to live in the keto world for a really long time. But once you start to get used to intermittent fasting, this can be something that you can do for life. So it's really a great thing for anybody who's trying to either maintain their weight or really try to lose weight. If you're going to lose weight, you may want to avoid some of those fun foods that we were talking about, at least in the beginning, until you get to your maintenance weight. But really, that's what's so great about intermittent fasting, is it really can be for anyone.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that I've enjoyed. I do it usually at work, and I don't generally do it on the weekends. But questions around intermittent fasting, because then some people ask, well, what about someone who doesn't eat all day or goes several days and all they have is, water or coffee or something like that? Is that safe? I always hear that when you do intermittent fasting, or when you fast for, let's say, a day or so, it really helps your cells. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's actually studies that show really the magic happens when you're looking at reducing inflammation or regeneration of damaged cells, happens when you get into the 18 to 21 hour fast window and beyond that. So, for weight loss purposes, it's really great to start and simple to start with something like an 8-16 or a 16-8 fast. But when you're really trying to correct some dysfunction there or reduce inflammation, you want to get into those longer fasts. And there are some studies where doing a longer, 24-hour, 36-hour fast can really be beneficial, especially like for cancer. We're kind of starving the cancer, if you want to think about it that way. So there's some studies that really look around that. Of course, you want to make sure that you're hydrated. And again, if you're struggling with low blood sugar, things like that, then you just want to pay attention to that. Sometimes there are some foods that are allowed in the fasting. So some of those fasting days, there's some articles that talk about you can eat up to 500 calories, and that still would be considered a fast. There are other people who do what they call one meal a day. And basically they're fasting throughout the day and they just have one meal. So it's not even a window of, time 6 hours. It's just one meal a day. Again, the term intermittent fasting is important. So if you go to one meal a day, that's okay, but you may want to adjust that throughout your week in terms of what time that meal is, because if you do that every day for the rest of your life, your body's going to adapt to that. And then it's not really intermittent anymore. So, once you get into it, you may want to start adjusting that time frame a little bit.
What does it do for your metabolism? Does it speed it up? Does it slow it down? Do we know? There's kind of this idea that people who are gaining weight or can't lose weight have a slow metabolism. And then people who can, it seems like they just have an unlimited amount of food that they can eat, but they're still skinny, have a fast metabolism. I don't know that that's really real. I mean, there's so many different variables that go into that. So intermittent fasting, I would say probably, whether you want to call it metabolism, but when you're fasting, it actually speeds up your body's ability to get stored fat. So you're not starving yourself. If you go into starvation mode over a long period of time, your body starts looking for energy in the form of your muscle. So it's going to use up muscle, where the ability with intermittent fasting is actually gathering your fat cells. So your metabolism improves in the fact that it's helping you to burn fat instead of burn calories from muscle or your food, basically. So it's really going to help you lose more fat. All right, so if our viewers are interested, we've been talking about this for a few minutes. They're interested. They're like, okay, let me try this out. What would be your recommendation if someone wanted to try out intermittent fasting, Amy?
Yeah, that clock way is the easiest way, is just pick a window, between 6 and 8 hours that you're going to eat, and then the window between 16 to 18 hours that you're fasting. The easiest way, just like I described, is to start at noon, end at 6 or 7 p.m. That way you're sleeping through a good, if we're getting the 8 hours of sleep we're supposed to, you're sleeping during most of your fasting. A lot of people aren't starving first thing in the morning. You can have tea, you can have black coffee. You just don't want to consume a lot of calories, make sure, again, you're still well hydrated, and then you just start eating again at lunchtime the next day. That is the easiest way to get started.
Awesome. Amy Duffy, we really appreciate your analysis, your insight on this, and thanks so very much. Happy New Year to you. Much success in 2023.
Absolutely. Thank you. You too.
All right, take a look at the latest edition of La Prensa Latina on newsstands right now. You can see it there. President Biden and Lopez Obrador reach an agreement to control immigration and drug trafficking. That's the cover story of the latest edition of La Prensa Latina on newsstands. You can also check out laprensalatina.com. Let's bring in our editor, Vivian Fernandez de Adamson. Vivian, happy Friday. How are you doing?
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And it was so great to chat earlier this week for our viewers that are watching right now. We had a chance to meet face to face and talk about different things, our partnerships, and 2023 going forward, WMC and La Prensa Latina. Let me ask you about this story that's in the pages of La Prensa Latina right now. Mid-South Mission of Mercy to hold its 8th annual free Delta Care event. Tell me about it.
Yes, this is something that they have been doing for years already. You know, like you said, it's the 8th annual dental event. So it is a free mobile clinic that they will have at Bellevue Baptist. It's going to be at their gym, actually, and it's going to be on January 20th and January 21st. And it is going to start at 6 in the morning each day, but they recommend that people get there like at, as early as they can, maybe if they can get there, between 4 and 5 in the morning, because if you want to go at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, forget it. They're not going to see you. Like last year, they saw like 1,200 people. And this year they expect to see like at least 1,500 people. And then something that is really amazing about this is that out of these 1,200 patients that they saw last year, 37% were Hispanic.
Yeah, I was going to say, Vivian, this has got to be a huge event for the Latino community here to have something like this. I mean, 40% almost of the patients were from the Latino community.
Yes, that tells us, how big the community is here, that is growing. So, and again, this event is very important for the community because, there's a lot of people that cannot afford, going to dentist, or they don't have insurance, especially. So this is why they have this available for the community. So among the services that they will provide are cleanings, fillings, and extractions. So I talked to Dr. Mitchell Goddard, who is a CEO of Mid-South Mission of Mercy, and he said that this year they will have a 3D printer. So, they're going to be using this 3D printer to print partials to replace missing front teeth. So this is, just unbelievable that, you have this opportunity to go, and be able to have this service done. Now, again, you have to remember that if you want to be taken care of, that this event, you have to be there early.
Okay, good advice there, Vivian. Let's move on to another story that you're highlighting on the cover of La Prensa Latina. That's President Biden meeting with Mexico's president about an agreement to control immigration as well as drug trafficking. Tell me about that.
Yes, like we all know, they had the annual summit this week, in Mexico, between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And then they met and they had a conference and, they talk about different topics, like immigration, climate, and other things. So especially immigration is very important. Because of all, the immigrants that are coming to the U.S. From Nicaragua, El Salvador, Venezuela, Mexico including, So what Lopez Obrador, President Lopez Obrador said is that they are going to help, the U.S. in controlling this situation. So, and obviously, it's not going to be like, immediately, but they're going to try. So right now, what they agreed on is that, the plan that the U.S. has for now is that they will send 30,000 immigrants per month from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela back across the border from among those who enter the U.S. illegally. So immigrants who arrive from those countries are not easily returned to their home countries, for different reasons. So, that's what they're going to do. And in addition to these 30,000 people per month from those nations as well, and if they get sponsors and background checks, and they have an airline ticket, then, they'll be able to come to the U.S. and work legally in the country for 2 years. So this is one of the agreements that they have reached so far. And not only, they discussed about immigration, but also, the drug trafficking, trying to control this problem that affects everybody, especially with fentanyl. So what Lopez Obrador says is that they're going to control, the drugs that are coming from, other countries like Asia, for instance, other continents and other countries. So they're going to control the seaports, with military force, and hopefully, it'll stop or it'll get reduced. So let's see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Vivian, thank you. This is, again, the cover of La Prensa Latina on newsstands now. You can also check out the articles online at laprensalatina.com. Before we let you go, Vivian, anything else?
Yes, back to the Mid-South Mission of Mercy. It is also very important to let people know that they're not going to check IDs. They're not going to ask, where you're from or IDs or anything. You can mark if you are, when you're registering, if you are Hispanic or whatever, but, they're not going to ask for your ID or if you have insurance or anything like that. And they're going to take care of kids, from kids to adults to seniors.
Okay, and there it is, the information, January 20th, 21st there, Mid-South Mission of Mercy. Be certain to save that date. Again, you can read all about it on the pages of La Prensa Latina, laprensalatina.com. Vivian, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, switching gears right now, let's talk about the Varsity Blues scandal. Do you remember what we're talking about here? This is a guy by the name of Rick Singer. He just was sentenced to 42 months in jail because he was trying to get in people who paid him into schools pretending to be either an athlete or pretending to have high scores in order to pass entrance exams and to be accepted into some of these high-profile schools. Well, again, he is sentenced to 42 months in prison. How did the scandal affect testing in college admissions? Many people want to know. And how does this case highlight how much competition there is for selective colleges, the advantages of the wealthy, and how the average student can still compete with great grades and great test scores? We're going to bring in our expert in all this. David Blobom is a nationally recognized expert in the entrance exam and college admissions industry, and he is a friend of ours because we've been talking about him for months before he became nationally known, back when he was, certainly known with us. David, it's always good to see you. Happy New Year. How are things?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
So in light of the Varsity Blues scandal and sentencing, how does testing and college admissions change, if at all, David?
Yeah, so for all the media sensation, it's kind of interesting to see that testing and college admissions didn't really change much at all. I mean, there were some tweaks to how students could take the test with accommodations, but basically no changes because this was a very small number of applicants out of millions of applicants. But it certainly highlighted the lengths that wealthy families will go to get their kids into top-ranked colleges. And so for me, what was really interesting is that it highlighted that the SAT and ACT, they're barriers for all students, wealthy students, any student. And so these wealthy families, they couldn't just buy higher SAT and ACT scores through test prep because their kids would still have to learn the grammar, the rhetorical skills, the mathematics, reading. And so they paid a proctor to take the test for them and broke the law. So I think it's important to realize that the SAT and ACT are an equalizing barrier, that all students can do better on the tests, but all students, wealthy or not, they have to learn the content if they're going to get a higher score.
Then why is there such a push to do away with these college admissions tests that we see, the ACT, SAT?
Yeah, so if you look at average SAT and ACT scores and you plot those scores by wealth, you see very clearly that the higher income families, their kids on average have higher SAT and ACT scores. So that paints the picture that SAT and ACT scores, they don't reflect academic content and knowledge and skills, but it looks like it's a reflection of wealth. But really what's happening there is, unfortunately, because of inequality in the US, there is unequal access to quality education. So it's because those wealthy families have better access to good education for their kids that their kids on average do better on tests of academic education. But that doesn't mean that the disadvantaged students, that some of them don't rise above, get great educations and do a lot of prep on their own and get great scores. They can still compete. And that also, just like Varsity Blues illustrates, it doesn't mean that the wealthy automatically have higher SAT and ACT scores. They still have to have the knowledge to do well on those exams as well.
All right, let's talk about those exams. Many of our viewers here perhaps have high school students, and the timeline for juniors when it comes to taking the SAT and the ACT. Let's go over that, and then how many times they should take it, when do they need to be finished with testing, and how they can improve their scores. Let's talk about those things.
Yeah, so I would encourage all students to apply early action to all their top schools and early decision to their very top school, because applying early decision gives you a little bit of a boost in the admissions process. So most of those early application deadlines are November 1st of a student's senior year. So students should try and finish by then. So then we can kind of walk back the timeline from there. So if a student is a 10th grader right now, or I'm sorry, an 11th grader right now, they can still take the March, May, June, August, and October SAT exams and still get their results before the early application deadlines. For the ACT, they can take the February, April, June, July, September, and October exams. So still lots of exams coming up. A lot of families are, it used to be 10 years ago, you really didn't want to take the test multiple times because all of your results would be reported to most colleges. Now, most colleges only see your highest section scores from any exams. You only need to report the test dates that you want to report to colleges. And ACT actually allows you to delete exams for free at any time. So now students can even take the real test as practice. And the real test is the best possible practice. And you don't even need to show those results unless you do well. So you can take the test as long as you're continuing to go up on it and until you hit your score goal if you want.
Let me ask you this, because I know that essays are a component with some of those tests, the ACT and the SAT, and there's something called ChatGPT. What is that?
This is mind-blowing. It's going to change so many industries, and already has. One of the ways that it's changed college application essays is that it can write better application essays than about 75% of high school students. So the outputs that it gives are only as good as the inputs. So you can say, write an essay on why I want to go to Tulane University and make it 500 words. And it'll do that, but it'll be very general about, Tulane, how diverse New Orleans is, etc. But if you give it very specific inputs, like when I was 5 years old, I almost drowned. I was saved by paramedics. Since then, I realized life is a gift. I want to be an emergency room doctor eventually. Write a 500-word essay about that and why I want to go to Tulane. And it will write out in 3 seconds a fantastic essay for you. A very good writer will still be able to write better than it, but it's better than most high school students. The other way that high school students are already using it for their college application essays is they'll write their own essay, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, write this better. And it'll rewrite it, make it all grammatically correct, make it clearer, more concise. And I've seen with my own students that I would say for the average high school student, it maybe doubles the quality of their essays after it rewrites it for them.
That is crazy to me. Wow, what a tool. I would think that would be almost cheating a little bit. Wow. What do you think?
And yes, it gets into much larger equity issues. I mean, is it cheating? I think so. But then you also have heads of state universities like John Boeckenstedt. He's the head of enrollment for Oregon State University. He encourages students to employ essay editors that not only do, check your spelling and your punctuation, but also your voice, tell you what you should be writing about or not writing about. So it's very difficult that the wealthy actually have access to a lot of essay editing that editing is very ambiguous already. So the irony behind ChatGPT is it actually gives all students access to a good essay editor. Now, I think that they should make sure that essays from the wealthy or the not wealthy, everyone is authentic essays. But currently they don't have a way to do that because essays are not proctored. So students were already making up the content of their essays, or the essays were being written by other people. So there were already lots of problems surrounding authenticity. This just highlights them in a big way because every student's essay is potentially inauthentic now. So they really need to figure out a solution to this.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. My goodness. Wow. Okay. So the SAT, I understand, is going through a lot of changes here, shorter, digitally adaptive next year. What should students and parents know about it?
So for any 10th graders, the first thing they need to know is it's changing. So that's helpful that you even told them that because most don't know. So 10th graders in 11th grade, so this next year when they're juniors, the SAT is going to radically change in the middle of their junior year. So if they're preparing for the current SAT, the runway ends December of this year, 2023. The paper SAT will never be there again. So then if they don't finish by then, they're going to be taking the digital SAT in March of 2024. Now, there's not a lot of practice tests. There's only 4 practice tests for the new digital test. So if students don't finish with the current SAT, or they don't think they can finish with the current SAT by December, they're probably better off going with the ACT because that test is not changing next year and hasn't substantially changed for over 20 years.
And let's talk a little bit about, I know we've talked about this a bunch in the past, but let's refresh everybody's memory about which test would be better for their child, the SAT and the ACT, how to determine that, and how to submit those scores to prospective universities.
Absolutely. So the first thing that students need to do is figure out which test fits them best. So the ACT, it's more straightforward, but it rushes you more. The SAT, it's more abstract and tricky, but you have more time per question. So that might fit one student better than another. So students should first just Google official past SAT, official past ACT. That'll take them to the SAT and ACT websites where they'll take an official exam. They should print those out, take both of them, and see which one they do better on. And there are concordance tables. You can just Google SAT and ACT concordance table to compare your scores on both. So whichever test is better, students should pick that. And then it's a golden age of information. So there's a million ways they can prep. All students can prep for free through the Khan Academy online. Any student who gets to take the ACT for free, which is 20% of students are on fee waivers, which means they can take the ACT for free 4 times, and they get free online prep through the ACT. But Other resources are the prep books that are out. Those are great for independent study. There's also classes, private tutoring, and the National Test Prep Association. They have a member directory, so a vetted list of companies around the nation that can provide great test prep if the student wants those classes or private tutoring, just for more accountability and more instruction.
David, very informative as always. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go about the ACT, the SAT, the admission scandal, how things are evolving and changing?
I would just encourage students to know that they can gain an advantage in the admissions process and gain an advantage in getting scholarships and more merit aid if they have good SAT and ACT scores. And that's not limited to wealthy students. That's just anyone who puts in the time to learn this content, which is available to all.
Great advice. David Blobaum, Director of Outreach, National Prep Association. Always appreciate your informative interviews here in the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Thanks very much and Happy New Year.
Thanks so much. You too.
All right, coroners are still working to figure out exactly the cause of Lisa Marie Presley's death. Burial preps are underway in Graceland. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office says Lisa Marie Presley's cause of death was deferred after an initial examination. The medical examiners requesting a deeper dive. After that, investigators say doctors will reevaluate the case and make a final decision on the cause. And a reminder about Lisa Marie's public memorial this weekend. It'll be Sunday morning, 9 o'clock at the front lawn of Graceland. Lisa Marie will be buried there at Graceland next to her son, Benjamin, who died in 2020. Okay. Oh, and just want to let you know that we will be streaming this memorial service live on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock at the front lawn of Graceland. So you can tune in to that memorial again on actionnews5.com. We will be streaming it live on our website. City of Memphis is mourning the loss of a longtime gay rights activist and author. This is Vincent Astor. He died Monday, according to the Commercial Appeal. He was 69 years old. He was an LGBTQ historian in the Mid-South. He was also a group leader for the 1993 March on Washington. A lot of his collectibles went to the Benjamin Hooks Public Library for the public to see. Okay, a middle school student surprised with a $300 prize for a school essay. The Fraser student wrote about helping groups connected to this idea and how to handle youth crime and violence. Action News 5's Victoria Poirier has more.
For the last 16 years, Heal the Hood Foundation Wake Up Tour has been the longest running positive school tour in the city of Memphis, reaching over 500,000 students in the tri-state area.
We're on a journey right now globally to find 300,000 heroes.
The tour stopped at West Side Middle School in Fraser to surprise essay winner Miracle Cole with the grand prize.
When I first started writing an essay, I thought about what the kids in my school go through and what I'm going through and how it is living in Memphis.
The purpose of the essay was to help group concepts and ideas to battle youth crime and violence in their communities. Beeman says that the foundation has plans to continue the tour to 25 other schools to help make a dent in crime and violence.
And we often say that these kids really have the solutions for the problems of tomorrow, today.
The tour inspires children to get out of gangs and make drastic life changes. The foundation does have further plans to build a hero empowerment center for the city of Memphis, which will all be possible thanks to the gift from landowners outside of Memphis that gave the foundation over 7 acres of land. The next tour stop will be Friday, January 20th at MLK College Preparatory High School at 1:30 p.m. Victoria Poirier, Action News 5.
Okay, Mississippi court gave a former Ole Miss turned NFL player a $100,000 bond after being accused of kidnapping. The 35-year-old Jarrell Poe appeared in court yesterday with 35-year-old Gavin Bates. Police say both of them kidnapped a man in Jones County, Mississippi last week. The victim told police he was then taken to Madison County, north of Jackson, and then forced to withdraw money from a bank. Both Poe and Bates are charged with kidnapping and conspiracy to commit a crime. All right, from diagnostic imaging to detecting tumors in aquatic animals to doubling the lifespan of dogs, the last 40 years have brought about some remarkable breakthroughs in veterinary and medicine that transform diagnosis, treatment, and quality of life of animals of all kinds. We're joined now by Jean O'Neill and Dr. Dana Varble of NAVC, along with their furry friends here, to talk more about some of the advances in veterinary medicine. Jean and Dr. Varble, how are you? Good morning.
Hey, we're doing great here. Thanks.
Tell us about your friends that are on set with you.
All righty. I have here my grand puppy. This is Rusty. He's a 1-year-old golden doodle.
And we have Athena here, one of our office dogs. She's a 9-year-old Labrador.
Excellent, excellent. So we're talking about the North American veterinarian community here. And I'm curious, Jean, we'll start with you. Based on the advances over the last 40 years, how long can we expect a dog to live these days?
Sure. So Rusty here, he can be expected to live more than 12 years. 40 years ago, his lifespan would have been much shorter. But due to some of the advancements in the veterinary healthcare field, like cancer detection, early cancer detection, and non-invasive surgeries, some diets that are specialties for some of these dogs has really enabled them to extend their lifespan so they live longer, healthier, happier lives.
That sounds fantastic. Dana, got a question for you. As dogs live longer, talk about some of the advancements that have been made to extend and improve the quality of their lives.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think 40 years ago, we mostly had to adapt human medications for dogs and cats and horses. But nowadays, we have medications that were developed specifically for specific animals. So we have dog arthritis medication and cat kidney medication and even special medications for horses. And couple that with the advancements Jean was mentioned, better surgeries, better nutrition, we're really seeing dogs thrive into their senior years.
Excellent, excellent. Dana, what advances in veterinary medicine have been launched over the past 4 decades? And talk about some exciting innovations that are being presented in 2023.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, we have new medications come up every year. So even this year, we're going to see new medications. A disease, something like feline infectious peritonitis, which was basically fatal. We have medications on the market that might make it a completely curable disease. Couple that with better preventative medication, better heartworm, flea, and tick prevention means that dogs just are not subject to the same diseases that they used to be. It also makes them better pets for us because we don't have to worry about them bringing those diseases home. And let's not forget about all the contributions that veterinarians make to farm animals, making food production safer, more efficient, and lower waste.
Jean, over to you. I know you guys work for the North American veterinary community, the NAVC. Is this still veterinary medicine, still a field of interest for young people out there? If so, where can people get some more information?
Sure. It absolutely is a field that younger folks should be gravitating towards, especially with the explosion in the pet ownership over the past couple of years. Almost 70% of all households today own a pet. So they get to experience what it's like to grow up with a pet and take care of it. We were fortunate enough to host 20 or so middle schoolers this week to give them the experience of what it's like to be a veterinarian for a day. And they were able to put their hands on model dogs with a veterinarian to experience what it's like to do emergency procedures, some ultrasounds, maybe even draw some blood, but they all had a great time doing it, and it gives them a better feel for what it's like to get into this field and what it would take. Now, if any of your viewers want to find out where to go to find out more materials and information about what we do here at North American Veterinary Community, you can have them visit navc.com.
Okay, well, listen, we really appreciate you guys joining us today. Jean O'Neill and Dr. Dana Varble, thanks so much, and please give extra hugs for your friends there.
We definitely will.
Okay, this weekend, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee will take the oath of office for his second term as governor. In the days leading up to the event, Tennesseans are encouraged to schedule free tours of the Tennessee State Capitol and the Tennessee State Museum. The theme for this year's inauguration, Tennessee Leading the Nation. The ceremony is set for Saturday morning, 10 o'clock on the Legislative Plaza in Nashville. Well, schools across the country are trying to combat learning loss from the pandemic. It's still very much a real issue in the classroom. Action News 5's Washington Bureau reporter Jamie Bittner traveled with the U.S. Secretary of Education to talk about that issue.
Hello. Good morning. The Secretary of Education doesn't want classes to go back to how they used to be.
Tell me a little bit about what you're learning.
So he's working to teach the nation what's possible.
Good morning.
Secretary Cardona is bringing the message in person to schools. There is federal help out there for schools working to redefine what education looks like.
We know that when students are hungry, it impacts our ability to learn. When students have housing insecurity, it impacts our ability to learn.
The Biden administration is advocating for what's called full-service community schools, like Anita J. Turner Elementary in Washington, D.C.
So does every block represent a different sound?
The initiative encourages districts to form community partnerships to address everything from education to mental health, nutrition, and shelter.
Recognizing that we cannot do this work in silo, right? That we have to have other people supporting us along the way.
Secretary Cardona says $63 million in grants have already been invested in 42 community schools across 20 states. Funding to tackle problems that Teach for America's CEO says is fueled by 3 issues.
Our students are just not well. They're not well from a learning perspective, and they're not well from an emotional, social wellness perspective. Second, we have teachers that are in crisis. Our teachers are being asked to do more with less. And third, we have an outmoded system.
But Cardona says he's focused on solutions.
High quality teachers, small class sizes, small group setting, intense focus on literacy and numeracy. I'm very concerned with the literacy and numeracy scores. You know what else I'm concerned about? Complacency, that we go back to the system we had before the pandemic.
Cardona also advocates for districts to use federal funding programs for tutoring, staff, and teacher salaries. In Washington, I'm Jamie Bittner.
Okay, in a virtual lunch and learn session, Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy gave an update on an investigation surrounding the Tyree Nichols case. He spoke about the investigation and the process.
When it comes to an officer-involved shooting, there is a statute that specifically gives District Attorney's Office discretion to release the video, even if the TBI investigation is not yet complete. But this is not an officer-involved shooting.
Complaints this morning coming from the campus of Arkansas State University after students say they can't use TikTok. Now, students have not been able to use the app on the school's Wi-Fi. Former Governor Asa Hutchinson banned it from state institutions because of its connections to the Chinese Communist government. And with this new semester, the university anticipates more students reaching out with issues about the app.
IT people sent me a note saying, oh, you ought to send that out to all of campus again because we sent it out in December and it went to all users. We have 14,000 students, and you've had 14 people hit you in the first day back because they've noticed that they can't use the Wi-Fi.
Despite the change, the university said it has not had a lot of complaints about TikTok. All right, unemployment is up 3.5% in Tennessee, ranked 25th compared to other states. Many are concerned it could get worse after fears of recession continue to loom across the U.S. this year. But one sector is trying to appeal to more people, and that's the field of education. In fact, some school districts across the state are having to get creative. In the Franklin, Tennessee Special School District, school leaders are telling people about some different ways to get your teaching license. One woman says she's getting hers through Arkansas State University.
I started working as a paraprofessional, and the longer I did it, the more I realized that this was the path I was supposed to be on.
Okay, and closer to home here, Memphis Shelby County School District expects to pick a search firm during its next meeting Tuesday, January 31st. Tonight on January 19th at 5:30 at Kingsbury High School on North Graham Street, they will have more public input. That'll be tonight at 5:30. A second one takes place Saturday at noon at the auditorium of the Board of Education on Avery in Midtown Memphis. Okay, City of Memphis has created a new scholarship fund for high school students who are continuing their education at HBCUs. The Memphis City Council has dedicated $1 million to the scholarship fund. There will be 100 scholarships available for the next school year. The amount will range from $2,500 to $15,000. Applications are open right now. They'll close March 31st. To apply, you can go to actionnews5.com. Tennessee is adding an additional resource, in fact, additional resources towards the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline in West Tennessee. That number was launched in mid-July. There it is, 988. Tennessee has distributed nearly $3 million in federal funding to communities all across the state to hire more staff to answer those calls. The last half of 2022, there were nearly 10,000 texts to 988 and chats on the 988lifeline.org. Millions of people get sick each year from contaminated food, and finding the source of contamination isn't easy, but that could be changing. In this morning's Best Life Report, we discuss a new plan aimed at reducing the number of foodborne illnesses and deaths. Ariana Poindexter has more.
No matter how hard he tries, Elliot Wheeler will never forget that time he had salmonella.
It just really kind of like knocks you out in a way that, at least for me, had never happened before.
Every year, an estimated 48 million Americans get sick from bacteria and viruses in their food. Now, the Food and Drug Administration is trying to reduce the number of illnesses with its food traceability rule, which covers foods through the entire supply chain.
This new record-keeping process is going to mean that everyone who touches the food, from the grower who grows it to the supermarket that sells it or the restaurant that serves it, is going to have to keep track of the food in the exact same way.
That means assigning a code to potentially riskier foods, those prone to contamination, such as soft cheeses, eggs, leafy greens, nut butters, and tomatoes, so they can be tracked more efficiently.
In some cases, this new rule may make it even easier for food to be identified as potentially harmful before it even hits the market and gets into the hands of consumers.
Meat and poultry aren't included since they're regulated by the USDA, not the FDA. CR says the new plan isn't perfect, but it's better than what's currently in place.
Right now, record keeping of this type is incomplete and inconsistent. So this will standardize everything, and it will make it easier for people to follow the food back.
Something Elliot is looking forward to.
If it could prevent future cases of food poisoning, that's a win-win for everybody.
Le Bonheur Children's Hospital is getting 2 new state-of-the-art ambulances. These are basically mobile intensive care units. Le Bonheur is the only full-service children's hospital in the region that helped get these here.
These are the units that we use to transport tiny premature babies, victims of trauma events who are children, as well as children with very special and complex pediatric health care needs. It allows us basically to have a mobile intensive care unit to transport these children to Le Bonheur, and this is an amazing.
Le Bonheur trains more pediatric specialists in Tennessee than any other hospital in the state.
Following yesterday's front, we are now left with some dry air as we finish off this work week. But your first alert to our next chances for rain, that is going to arrive as we're heading into this upcoming weekend. Not an all-day rain event for either one day, but better chances will be as we are heading into our Sunday. The reason being, we've got an area of low pressure that's going to develop and right along the Gulf Coast there, and we are going to see some moisture move in as a result of that. So really, most of your Saturday does look to be on the drier side. We'll start off with some sun. These clouds will fill in as we're heading into the afternoon. Notice by 5 o'clock, still looking at dry conditions. It may not be until closer towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night that we see a couple of isolated showers making their way into the mid-south, carrying over through the overnight into the early morning hours on Sunday. And as mentioned, not an all-day rain event. There will be some breaks and some dry air too. So just a few isolated showers by lunchtime on Sunday, with a better chance to see some isolated to scattered showers as we're heading into our Sunday afternoon, but tapering off by by Sunday night. We'll briefly dry out as we're heading into Monday, the start of the new work week. We do have a better chance of rain as we're heading into the middle of the week. Our second round will move in on Tuesday. Notice by Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock or so, isolated to scattered showers. These will fill in throughout the day. In fact, Tuesday rain does look to be quite widespread, especially by the lunch hour heading into the afternoon. Notice by 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so on Tuesday afternoon, starting to see some of that rain taper off, but we could have some cool air that filters in behind it, cold enough where we could even see a couple of flurries on the backside of this system. Now, we're still several days out from this event, but I will say at this point, this type of setup, it doesn't look very promising. Most of us will not see anything, and I'm not expecting any major accumulations or impacts from that, but we could see some of those flurries, especially for areas north and along I-40 that continue Tuesday night into our Wednesday morning. So rainfall amounts all the way through Wednesday generally look to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so. That means I'm not looking at any sort of major flooding concerns, as we'll have that that falls over the next several days. As mentioned, we are going to be rain-free for today. We've got that cold front that has moved to the east of here. We've got a lot of sunshine in store for us today. It is going to be breezy. We've got these winds out of the west and southwest around 20, 25 miles per hour this morning. We could see those wind gusts closer towards 30 miles per hour, especially late this morning and into the early afternoon. And those temperatures will keep us overall pretty seasonable, just slightly above the average. 58 degrees the high here in Memphis today, 54 in Brownsville, 55 in Alamo with 61 in Oxford, 57 in Marks with 51 in Wynne and 52 in Marion. Now tonight it is going to be a chilly night, back into the 30s, which is where we're supposed to be for this time of year. Just a few clouds, mainly clear skies across the Mid-South. And as mentioned, we're looking at dry weather today and tomorrow, but we will see some rain chances this weekend, primarily on Sunday afternoon. Dry as we head into the start of next week for your Monday, but then more rain by Tuesday, carrying over into Wednesday. Generally will be pretty seasonable, meaning temperatures are right where they should be, with those highs into the 50s and overnight lows generally in the 30s.
You know, here at Action News 5, we've done several stories about lead poisoning when it comes to children. It's a real issue here in Memphis and the Mid-South, and we want to just do a little bit of a deeper dive into this very issue. And I'm joined right now by Le Bonheur pediatrician Dr. Jason Yon. Dr. Yon, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Okay, good to have you back on the digital desk. How much of a problem is lead exposure here in Memphis and the Mid-South?
It's a significant problem in Memphis. A lot of it is due to our old housing stock. We have about 200,000 homes in Memphis that put children at risk for lead poisoning, and a lot of that is due to lead paint in the homes, industrial causes of lead being in our dust and our air, and lead pipes that lead to homes that can put lead in the water. So it's a significant issue. You know, Flint, Michigan got a lot of attention a few years ago about lead in the water there, but there are many Flints throughout our country, and Memphis is one of those. We're one of the highest countries in the Southeast for risk for children for lead poisoning.
It sounds terrible, and certainly something that is preventable. But if there are some children that are exposed to lead, are there symptoms that maybe parents can look for that would give them a heads up?
Well, that's one of the really dangerous things about lead, is that prevention is the key. There's no safe known level of exposure. And at low levels of lead exposure, you may not see any overt symptoms initially. At really high levels, we can see gastrointestinal distress, neurological manifestations. But at low levels, it's usually undetected unless we test for it. But it can cause significant issues around neurocognitive development and other areas like that, and can significantly interfere with the child's learning and development process, lead to school-based issues later on. It's been associated with things like aggression and other behavioral problems as well. So it's really a significant problem that we have to be very aware about.
No question about it, Dr. Yon. All right, so let's say there's some parents out there and they're unsure, and maybe they have an idea one way or the other. Is there an easy, quick way to test to see if they have lead in their home?
Well, there are programs that can come and test for lead in the home. They can test their water. They can have environmental surveys to help test for lead paint. A lot of it is risk-based. If your home was built before 1950, or if it has lead paint in it that was prior to 1978, and some of the vinyl blinds and things like that. As I said, many homes may be serviced by lead pipes. So a lot of it is being proactive. There is a simple blood test for children where we can test for lead in the blood. And we do that generally universally at the first and second birthday visit. But if parents have concerns, they can talk to their pediatrician. Is it right for their child to get tested outside of those ages? But we really worry about it in young children because of their rapidly developing brains and because of the absorption of lead, and they tend to put things into their mouth, and so they can have higher exposure to lead paint and dust and lead and things like that. So it is something that parents should be aware of and investigate if they feel the need to do that.
Right, and I guess that starts with reaching out to their pediatrician to really just kind of ask the questions. Should I test my child? And it sounds like just a simple blood test can really kind of determine if there's been lead exposure, right?
That's right. I think, talking with your pediatrician is a great place to start, and we can help work through some of those risk-based factors and decide if testing is appropriate. We can't necessarily tell that the child's never been exposed to lead, but at least we can be certain whether there's still ongoing exposure. And like I said, prevention is key. So working with our community agencies and health departments to identify houses that may have lead in their water or may have lead in the homes from other sources.
What about others in the household? We mentioned children. Are there other people that are at risk as well? I mean, I know it affects everybody, but children seem to be most at risk. What about elderly or other vulnerable people?
It's generally mostly children, just because, again, we've got that rapid brain development and the potential for insult at that age. Of course, it's for general health and future development, it's a good idea not to be exposed to lead. It is a toxic metal. Most adults are not going to be putting things into their mouth that we shouldn't be, but there could still be exposure from water, and obviously that's not safe. But it is primarily children that we worry about, especially with their neurocognitive development. And so if there is someone identified in the household that has been exposed to lead, we do recommend that all children be tested, even older children, so that we can identify any exposures, mitigate that exposure. And then if children need help with things like their developmental abilities or other things, we can monitor those and get families and children the support services that they need to address that.
Anything else, Dr. Yon, we can touch on with regards to this? Is there perhaps a website where if parents have questions, they can go get some answers?
Yeah. Well, I think, thinking about cleaning in the home, doors and windows, high touch surface areas, those are going to be your areas where, lead paint and lead dust may collect. So cleaning thoroughly and using healthy green products to do that. If you are concerned or you do have lead pipes, you can run the water cold for about 3 to 5 minutes prior to using any water for drinking or cooking. The CDC is a great resource to learn more about potential lead exposure in the home and how to mitigate those exposures and what to do about those things.
Okay. Well, listen, Dr. Yon, thanks so much for spelling it out for us. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Want to switch gears now and talk to many of those viewers that are watching both on Facebook and our digital platforms, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku, about the job-seeking market and how to get your LinkedIn profile specifically up to where it needs to be. Amp it up a little bit so that it grabs those employers and says, hey, look at me. hire me, consider me for this next job. Let's bring in the Senior VP of Marketing for Recruiter.com, Angela Copeland, joining us. Angela, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, I appreciate you joining us, and let's talk about that market out there. So the last time we talked to you was several months ago, and you told us it was really a job seekers market. Is that still the same? And from your perspective, and how important is that LinkedIn profile these days?
It's a great question. You know, the market continues to be very exciting right now. You know, things are really changing. As you've seen, some big companies have had layoffs, things are changing. But we actually do a poll each month called the Recruiter Index. And we found for our latest poll that sentiment is up among both job seekers and recruiters. And as you know, the unemployment rate continues to be relatively low, considering everything going on in the market. So I think it's a great time to continue looking, and LinkedIn is a great place to start.
You know, so many of us have LinkedIn profiles, and a lot of times, you know, we're unsure exactly, at least I am, of what to exactly post on LinkedIn. I mainly contain it to professional skills, professional workplace, not something that's silly. You know, I'll put that on other social media platforms, but only strictly with work-based stuff do I put on LinkedIn. Am I doing right? What's the best way to really enhance your LinkedIn profile?
Yes, you are. So first of all, I hear from lots of job seekers who say, do I really have to do LinkedIn? Is it really that important? And yes, it is, especially if you have a job that's kind of a desk job. LinkedIn is critical. And I agree with you. Social things are meant for Facebook. LinkedIn is for professional. You know, LinkedIn has a lot of different uses. So one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of recruiters actually use LinkedIn to find candidates. I have heard from a ton of job seekers over the last year who've gotten cold calls from recruiters that are interested to interview them for jobs. And those interviews actually turn out to be jobs. But the way the recruiters found them very often was by looking at their LinkedIn profile. So what you want to keep in mind is that when a recruiter is looking for someone on LinkedIn, they actually search. They have a special tool where they can sort of search through LinkedIn profiles. So you want to be sure that yours is up to date. You want to have your current job, all of your current skills. There's a headline that you want to be sure to fill out because that actually helps you to go sort of up in the search rankings in LinkedIn. And you want to have a picture because you want to show those recruiters and the employers that you are a real person and that you're really there looking for a job.
So many people will reach out on LinkedIn to try and network with other professionals. Is that a good or bad idea? What are the parameters of networking on LinkedIn?
You know, I love networking on LinkedIn, but you have to do it the right way. You don't want to come across like a spammer. You don't want to be bothering people. But it is a good way to reach out. And very often it can be a good way to research a company and see if you can find who the hiring manager is or who the other people are that work at that company. And, you know, I think that is a really solid way to use LinkedIn. If you want to reach out and mention that you've seen a job posting that you're interested in and you'd love to ask more questions, or that you'd love to sort of share a little bit about your background, I think that's great. Assuming that LinkedIn is sort of like your one-stop shop to getting free meetings all day, every day is kind of a bad tactic to be taking. But I think, you know, LinkedIn can be an excellent source. There are also a lot of groups on LinkedIn that you can join that are specific to sort of industry or job function. And it's a great way to meet other people that are in your industry and to really connect with them. But I think last but not least, there is an entire section of jobs that are posted on LinkedIn. So if you're looking for a job, you know, you can actually go and look up jobs at all different companies, not just LinkedIn, but many different companies, and find a fit for what you're looking for, and then you can actually apply. So it's interesting because you can use it in a lot of different ways, you know, to stay in touch with people you've worked with, to make new connections, and then to apply for things you'd like to do in the future.
Great advice, Angela. What about the do's and don'ts? I get people coming to me saying, I don't know if I'm posting too much on LinkedIn or if I'm not posting enough. You don't want to bother people, but at the same time, you want to get your name and brand out there. Are there some good do's and don'ts that people should be following?
Absolutely. You touched on one, which is really keep it professional. When you have your photo that you're uploading, make sure that it is just you and that it's recent. I've seen pictures in the past of people that are in a wedding dress or that are at a party or have a drink in their hand. That is not a LinkedIn photo. So there are things like that you want to keep in mind. You want to, again, keep your profile up to date. I would say keep in mind, though, that if there are certain things that are confidential about your job or your company, don't post those in your LinkedIn. Have discretion. Again, don't reach out to people too often. If you are posting, you can actually share posts similar to Facebook. You can kind of share updates on LinkedIn. And I would keep those to things that are truly useful information to the folks that you're connected to. You don't want to be posting sort of random things that you might otherwise see on a site like Facebook. And I would also follow sort of social etiquette norms where you're not talking about things like politics, religion, money right on your LinkedIn. Think of it almost like a dinner party where you only know these people so well and you're there to make a good first impression, but it's got to be kind of surfacey to some degree.
LinkedIn has certain levels, premium, the free membership. When should we go for the premium?
It's a good question. The good news is they have a trial, and I always suggest to job seekers sign up for the trial and see what you think about it. You can get away with not having it, but if you are actively looking for a job, sometimes signing up for the paid service can be helpful. The big feature that I think is really useful to job seekers is that it allows you to send what's called an in-mail. And that means that you can send kind of like an email within LinkedIn, but to folks that you don't otherwise know or you're not already connected to. And each month, if you have a paid subscription, you're allocated, I believe it's maybe 5 in-mails that you can send, and that can really help you as you're applying. To me, that's really the biggest difference, although I do think it's possible that LinkedIn tends to prioritize the paid members above the non-paid members when it comes to applications and other, communications within LinkedIn. So I think there's a slight advantage, and it's not too terribly expensive, but I would start out with the free trial because you can certainly get away with using that.
You mentioned earlier about your picture, make sure you have a picture on there. And I'm curious, a lot of times people don't know the kind of picture. Do you want a picture where you're sitting at a cubicle? Do you want a picture where, it's like a glamour shot? Can you give a little clarity on the picture?
It's a great question. When it comes to your picture, it doesn't have to be some professional photo that you hire a photographer to take. You can have a family member or a friend take it, and you could take it with a phone even. But it does need to be, a shirt or a dress that you would wear in a professional environment. And, you want to have good lighting. You want to have the picture be recent, and, be sort of in a space where there are not other people around in that photo with you. And it should primarily be your face. Those would be the guidelines I'd really try to stick to with the photo.
This has been fantastic, Angela. Really appreciate the insight here. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go?
No, I think, if you're ready to look for a job, start now, because it can take months and you don't want to put it off. And, I would say one of the biggest fears job seekers have is, gosh, what if I get that job offer and it's not for me? But if it's not for you, you can just turn it down and keep going. So start looking.
How long would you say that it takes someone to get a job in this market?
Oh, it's such a good question, because so often as a job seeker, you'll get feedback from your family and friends who just can't believe that you don't have a job yet. It really depends. At an executive level, it could take 3 to 6 months to go through an interview process once you find the right job. But sometimes if you're sort of like in an entry level position, say right out of college, that process could just take a few weeks or maybe 1 to 2 months. But first, you've got to get in front of that hiring manager, and that takes time. It takes persistence. So, get out there and start applying now.
Angela Copeland, thanks so much. We appreciate the insight each and every time we talk. Thanks for taking a few minutes with us today.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Amanda Hansen here at the Action News 5 Digital Desk. Up to 30% of COVID patients end up with long COVID. It's a serious, debilitating problem that can last a lifetime. Many people dealing with symptoms months and months after after developing COVID. And long COVID has already upended the lives of more than 20 million Americans, and its impact on the economy and also the healthcare system is well into the billions of dollars. So this morning is something we're going to be focusing on here at the Digital Desk, and here to talk more about it, we have Dr. Peter Rowe. He is a long COVID expert, and he also is a professor at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, along with Cynthia Adenig. She had mild COVID early during the pandemic, developed long COVID, and is now recovering from disabling, life-threatening conditions. We appreciate you joining us here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Dr. Rowe, I want to start with you, just for people to understand really what long COVID is. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So long COVID refers to a range of health problems that can occur after an initial infection. It doesn't have to follow a severe infection. We know that, as Cynthia will tell you, that it can occur after mild or even asymptomatic infections. And when it's at its worst, it can really interfere with the things that people used to be able to do and take for granted, like taking a long walk, working, shopping, going to advance their education. The main symptoms that we see after about 3 months are things like severe fatigue that can really interfere with activity. If people exceed their usual activities, they can trigger what's called post-exertional malaise, or a post-exertional worsening of all of their symptoms. Lightheadedness is common, along with high heart rates and low blood pressure. And many people have great difficulty thinking and concentrating like they used to. You can see other problems affecting the respiratory system, like coughing, changes in taste and smell, and essentially the symptoms of long COVID can be quite varied and originate from any organ that COVID initially infects.
And it's frustrating for those that end up with COVID, and then it's like this just doesn't go away, that head fogginess, and I mean, even other things. You said it varies. And even if you have a mild case, this is something that can happen to you. One thing I want to ask, though, could this impact people that even have been vaccinated? What are you seeing? Because it seems like this is something that we're still learning more about.
That's absolutely correct. And we know that vaccination protects against long COVID, but it's not complete. And so that if you get a breakthrough infection after being vaccinated and boosted, you can still have long COVID develop afterwards. And I think the fact that the virus is continuing to circulate in the community means that all of us are at risk for further infections and possibly for these severe long-term symptoms.
Now, Dr. Rowe, are there any treatments or cures for someone that is living with this long COVID? What can people do?
So two points of emphasis there. One is that there's no single agent that we have in our medical toolkit that will treat long COVID in all instances. And that needs to be a focus of the research that's going on around the world. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to do. So we have treatments that can be very effective for migraines if people have post-COVID migraines. We have good treatments for their high heart rates and low blood pressure problems. problems that are common in the circulation after COVID. And we can treat a variety of pain problems as well. So there are treatments out there for specific symptoms, but still no universally effective single treatment for the entire illness.
So Cynthia, I kind of want to bring you in and talk to you just because you're someone that has experienced this. You had that mild case, and I'm sure you never imagined that you would end up with long COVID. Just tell me about what that was like for you. What were some of the things that you experienced?
Yeah, I never imagined my life the way it is today. From my mild infection that I got in March 2020, I didn't have what was considered to be the well-known symptoms of active COVID. In fact, it was so mild, it was sniffles for maybe 2 days. And afterwards, I thought I was okay, but as the weeks went on, I developed life-threatening, severe illnesses. And some of that was extremely high heart rate, even if I'm sitting or laying. I experienced crippling fatigue that made just brushing my hair impossible. And I also developed an anaphylaxis type reaction to a wide range of food and water overnight that led to me being bedbound for weeks. And I even lost my mobility and relied on a wheelchair for mobility for several months. And not enough is known about long COVID. So I didn't have proper care for several months. And I still today remain mostly homebound. And I need a lot of medications just to eat every day, to have just a tiny bit of a function, but I still remain disabled 2.5 years into long COVID.
I can't even imagine. And for you, I mean, this was obviously a major life change. And when you first started having these symptoms that came up, did you immediately think COVID or what? I mean, did you have any idea that that's what this was? There, I mean, at the time, I don't even know if there was the term long COVID at that point.
You're correct. At that time, there was no term long COVID, so I had no idea what was wrong with me. No doctor that I went to several doctors, several ER trips. They had no idea what was wrong with me. They misdiagnosed me as having anxiety, but because there was so little known about why I was suddenly reacting to all those foods, I lost 50 pounds in 4 months, and it really was life-threatening. I developed life-threatening illness because of those symptoms. Then I was afraid that I was going to die, and because I had no answers. And then I found an online support group before long COVID had a name, and there was so many people, tens of thousands, that had my symptoms. I was like, oh, okay, this is it. This is exactly what this is, and that really helped me to learn how to manage my symptoms along the way.
And, I've talked with people that have felt like that, I'm still dealing with symptoms well after, having COVID. And in a sense, they felt frustrated because it was one of those things where people just couldn't understand when they would say that, my brain is foggy, or have these types of symptoms. Was that something that you experienced, and what did it mean for you when you finally did find that support group and you said, you know what, I'm not the only one experiencing this?
Yeah, it was really confusing to figure out what was happening to me, because there were so many symptoms all over my body, top to bottom, and to have that cognitive decline on top of the crippling fatigue made even going to one doctor's appointment, I would have to rest for 2 days after just one doctor's appointment, and I would struggle to tell the doctor my symptoms because of the cognitive decline. So it's like a double whammy of bad. And that support group was really instrumental in validating me when doctors at that time couldn't. Their education for doctors just was not there. And even now, I know I'm still not properly diagnosed with all the things and the ways that COVID has affected me even 2.5 years into it.
You know, and I see here that obviously now you're a long COVID patient advocate, and you've testified before Congress about the need for long COVID support. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. Unfortunately, one time when I went to the hospital for dangerously low oxygen and dangerously high heart rate. And the ER staff didn't believe that anything was wrong with me, even though the machines were registering that my heart rate was extremely high. And so they threatened to have me arrested for seeking care during that incident. And because in my wheelchair, started filming it, that catalyzed me into becoming an advocate. And I said, if this is happening to me, I know it's happening to others. And then I was invited to testify about that experience and really the need for doctors to learn to recognize what long COVID looks like, and believe people who have symptoms that are hard to describe and try to get them that care that they need to recover.
And Dr. Rowe, this is where I want to kind of bring you back in just to kind of see what's being done to find out more answers about long COVID and what more should we be doing. And I know y'all got to wrap up soon, so if you could just kind of maybe touch on that and say where we can get some more information, we can wrap up here because I know you have some other interviews coming up.
Sure. So one of the places you can get information and learn about this is the solvelongcovid.org website, where you can get information about symptoms, learn about how you could get involved. This is a nonprofit that has been working in this field for over 30 years, trying to catalyze interest in this illness. In terms of what's being done, they're offering seed grants for junior researchers. And we need lots more research nationally and internationally. Thankfully, that's happening because of this huge economic impact of the long COVID. But the Recover Initiative at the NIH is one big study, but there are many, many studies that people can get involved in. We need a lot more in terms of clinical sites to care for people with these problems. Most people with long COVID are finding that it's hard to access medical care. So that's an area that we really need to address in the healthcare system.
Dr. Rowe, Cynthia, I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing your story. I know you'll have some other interviews to get to, but I appreciate your time, and I could talk about this on and on and on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
When we get a chance, we always love talking to the best food reporter in Memphis and the Mid-South. We've got Jennifer Chandler on the line with us at the digital desk. Jennifer, good morning. We are talking about king cakes, some of the favorites out there. How are you?
I'm doing very good, and I have to just say, king cakes, in my opinion, are perfect for breakfast, lunch, dinner, afternoon snack, late night snack, you name it. You can enjoy them all you want for the next few weeks.
Oh yeah, round the clock, baby. Here we go.
So if you're not familiar with king cakes, it's a Mardi Gras tradition that kicks off during Epiphany, which was January 6th. And from that point on until Fat Tuesday, which is the day before Ash Wednesday, you can enjoy a king cake. And the tradition goes is this cake is it's like a yeasty cake similar to a cinnamon roll dough, and it can be stuffed with lots of good things, but it's always decorated with like vanilla icing and has the cinnamon sugar, not cinnamon sugar, but the colored sugars on top and the Mardi Gras colors of gold and purple and green. And they are so good. But one of the things, if you happen to get the baby when you're taking a piece, tradition has it that you are to host the next party and bring the king cake for the next party. So it's kind of a catch-22. You get to be king for the day, but then you got to bring the next king cake.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, everyone always wants to find the baby, right?
I know. Well, and it used to be that if you wanted a good king cake, you'd have to drive down to New Orleans or you'd have to have one shipped to Memphis. And over the past few years, more and more Memphis bakeries are making king cakes, and they are making really good king cakes. So I have on the commercialappeal.com right now, I have a list of 14 places in the Memphis area where you can find a delicious king cake. But I wanted to talk about a few of them because they're all a little bit different. And actually, I think a good challenge should be spend the next 2 weeks tasting all 14 of them would be a good one. It'd be a good challenge to have.
Ooh, good.
So you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so one of my favorites has to do with the fact that I like a cream cheese stuffed king cake. And Sweet Lala's Bakery in East Memphis has a really good cinnamon roll dough, and they have turned it into this kind of big, and it's kind of, you can see from the picture, the cake is kind of like, it's fat. I mean, it's like this big, and it is stuffed with this delicious vanilla cream cheese. And it is really, really good. It's good room temperature, but if you ever happen to catch one when they're pulling them out of the oven when it's warm, or you reheat it, it's nice, and the icing gets all gooey, and it's really, really worth every calorie that you can have. But that's a really pretty one that you can see that they have. It's one of my favorite. La Baguette makes a really good one as well. And theirs is more what you would think of when you get one from Gambino's or someplace like that down in New Orleans. It's a thinner type cake, but again, it has all the goodness, and you can order it. La Baguette, I actually think they just have the cinnamon roll flavor. Not cinnamon, but the cinnamon flavor. But there are places like the Donut Hut. We didn't have a picture of theirs, but they're out in Collierville, and they make a king cake, and they can have it stuffed with everything from like cherry and blueberry. I think they're doing a Bavarian cream one this year. And they have multiple sizes so that you, depending on what size group you're getting, you can get a really big giant one, or you can get a medium one, or you can get a small one that feeds maybe like 6 to 10 people. So the Donut Hut has a lot of different flavors and different types of things you can choose from. Moving away from those traditional versions that those two places, if you're just wanting a king cake for two, what some of us sometimes do, the Ginger's Bread Company in Midtown, he makes a traditional size king cake, but he also makes one that serves two, that's really tasty, and it's very cute. There's also Memphis Whistle, which is a bar. You would not think to pick up your king cakes, but they make individual size king cakes there. And what's really cool about there, Jeff Hicks, who is the owner, he's a mixologist. He's all about making his own infused alcohols and spirits. And he infuses vodka with cinnamon bark to make this kind of almost like fireballish type vodka. And they use that as the cinnamon base when they're making the icing for their king cakes. So that's kind of fun. And you can order those in advance. She'll have them. Amanda is his wife, and they have them. She's the one, the baker, and she has them in the restaurant. Most days, a limited number, but you can order these individual size ones there. Okay, moving from the non-traditional even further, there are a couple places doing some really interesting flavors this year. One is Farm and Fig, which is a prepared foods shop that is in the Cooper Young neighborhood. And owner Gina Grazzani told me that they're going to be making their traditional one this year that comes with cinnamon and cream cheese. But they are doing one called the King Creole, which I can't wait to get a bite of this one. It is stuffed with a banana and peanut butter pastry cream, and it's got the vanilla icing and all the sugar, on top, but it also has candied bacon on top. I mean, does that not sound like sinful and sinfully good?
Yes, very decadent. I love it. Keep it going, Jennifer. Yeah. We love it.
And then also St. Michael's Church does king cakes every year. Their head pastor and priest, Ben Bradshaw, before becoming in the priesthood, he was a chef. And so he does a lot of cool things around food, and it's a fundraiser for them. They are doing king cakes this year, and they have a whole variety of flavors. I actually had their Nutella one last year, and if you like Nutella, that's definitely one you might want to try, but they have a big selection of flavors as well. And one I'm really excited about this year is, in the past, king cakes really, if you're gluten-free, you really haven't had an option, just because of the nature of what a king cake is. But this year, the gluten-free bakery Jacques Louise, which is an online bakery, you order a special order only. She is making gluten-free king cakes for those who can't have gluten. So there is an option now for those of you that want something different. And one of the things I'm going to say about all these king cakes is order them in advance if you think you want one. I mean, as I said, many of them say that they have some in stock, but they're probably going to help, the week or two before Mardi Gras, they're probably going to only have one or two in-house, and they will probably sell out quickly. And especially if you want one right about Mardi Gras, like around that weekend before Mardi Gras on Fat Tuesday, they only have a limited amount of capability in their bakeries, so they will cut off orders. And most places I find sell out a couple of weeks in advance for those big days, that Saturday and Sunday and that Tuesday of Mardi Gras weekend. So definitely order in advance if you think you want to order one for a group. But if anything, just go find one over the next few weeks. It's good. I mean, they are so good. I have to admit, I may have already had 2 or 3.
Well, that gluten-free option, that's a good option for a lot of people. My wife's gluten-free, so that's a big one that we can enjoy and take part in. Tell us the dates again, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, just so we have it down.
I'm sitting here and I'm all of a sudden, I was like, had this senior moment. I want to tell you real quick about the exact date, because, Fat Tuesday changes every year. And so, wait, I'm looking at, February 21st. As soon as I got on here, I was like, wait, I forgot to double check the date. So you have until February 21st to enjoy a king cake. So.
Awesome. And then Primus Bakery, I see this one here.
Oh, it's Prima's Bakery and Boutique.
Yes.
So Prima's is the Spanish word for cousins. And there are 2 cousins that own this cute little bakery that is downtown on South Main. It's kind of like a couple of bays down from Ernestine and Hazel's. And they do just amazingly beautiful desserts, and it's a fun gift shop boutique. And so this is their king cake. And as you can see, when you look at these pictures, everybody's king cake is a little bit different. And that's what I love about it. It's fun to go and taste and see how different they are. And one of the things about Prima's is, in addition to the king cakes, they're making king cake donuts. They're making king cake macaroons. They're making I think king cake decorated cookies. So they have a lot of fun things on their menu that are definitely worth checking out. I'm trying to think of who else that I have forgotten to mention. There's so many good ones on the list. Oh, and it's not necessarily a cake, so it didn't make my list, but insiders know that if you love a donut and you love a king cake, the 2 weeks prior to Fat Tuesday, king cake donuts show up in the case at Gibson's Donuts. So that's a good thing to know.
Say no more. That's awesome. I love the cream cheese filling. I mean, the Bavarian cream and some of the other ones. I didn't know there was so much creativity when it came to king cakes. It wasn't. I knew it was not a one size fits all, but certainly there's a lot of creativity. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so people can see this on commercialappeal.com/food, right, Jennifer?
Yes, I have the full list is up there now, and it'll actually be in the print edition Friday. And definitely check it out. And I said, let me know what are your favorites. And if you discover one somewhere else that somehow I missed, please let me know, because I'm originally from New Orleans. I was born there. I mean, I grew up pretty much in Memphis, but there's certain things that have a special place in my heart, and the king cake tradition is one that definitely does. So I want to make sure that I include everyone that I can in that list. So if you find someone that's making a great one, send me a note. Let me know.
Awesome. Jennifer Chandler, the Commercial Appeal food reporter. We always appreciate your segment here on the Digital Desk. Thanks very much.
It's good to see you. Happy Mardi Gras.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you as well. Good morning, everyone. Andrew Douglas in the Action News 5 digital desk. Let's talk about health care changes for older Americans. They're going to be seeing some changes in 2023. Brand name drug prices, they've grown faster than general inflation now for more than a decade, meaning a growing number of patients have had to go without necessary medications. That's why AARP has been working hard to convince lawmakers to allow Medicare to negotiate prices with pharmaceutical companies, levy tax penalties on drug makers that raise prices more than inflation, and then cap Medicare Part D out-of-pocket costs. Let's talk about some of those changes for Medicare recipients right now with Lee Purvis, AARP's Senior Director of Healthcare Costs. Lee, good morning. Appreciate you being here. So let's talk about the changes that Medicare participants will be seeing this year.
Yeah, there are three really big changes that all Medicare beneficiaries should be aware of. Starting in January, recommended vaccines are now free for all Medicare beneficiaries. Also, Medicare beneficiaries who are in prescription drug plans will now have $35 cost sharing for their insulin. And another really big important change that you already mentioned is that drug companies will now be penalized if they increase their prices faster than inflation, which will hopefully discourage them from taking those big price increases that we've been seeing lately.
Okay, and how does this compare to 2022? I mean, you mentioned what we can expect in 2023. How does that compare with what we saw last year?
So last year, frankly, none of those protections were in place. People sometimes for vaccines were paying upwards of $100 as a cost sharing for their vaccines. And we also saw people who were taking insulin that were paying on average around $50 per month for their insulin, sometimes as much as $100 per month. So this change is a really important one because it's going to result in a lot of savings. And when it comes to those price increases, AARP has been reporting on prescription drug prices for a very long time. And the reality is nothing was in the system to stop drug companies from taking those big price increases, and now something is there because of this new law.
All right, well, let's talk about vaccines for Medicare beneficiaries this year. What's the change and what can they expect?
So previously, vaccines could be covered under your Medicare prescription drug plan. And depending on your plan and where you were in the benefits, sometimes you could have cost sharing of hundreds of dollars. And now that's going to stop. All recommended vaccines will now be available for free for Medicare beneficiaries. So that's going to hopefully reduce some obstacles that people may have had to getting the vaccines that they need.
We lost your audio.
Lee, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can. Thank you. You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So apologize for that. I was wondering if you could kind of give us some insight into people here in the Mid-South. Of course, we're in Tennessee, but we also cover Mississippi and Arkansas. Those people on Medicare that use insulin, how is that going to change in 2023?
So specific to Tennessee, there are about 83,000 people who are currently using insulin. So that is going to be a really big change for them because their cost sharing is now going to be hopefully greatly reduced down to $35 or potentially even less. And we know that there have been a lot of people who use insulin who have been facing really high out-of-pocket costs. So hopefully this change is going to take away kind of the struggles that people have been facing in terms of affording the medications that they need.
So let's talk about some of the other changes here. You're going through a lot of changes for older Americans, Medicaid, and or rather Medicare recipients. What about some other changes? When will we start to see those issues out-of-pocket prices? I know you mentioned a little bit off the top. Any other changes this year?
Yeah, there's some really big changes coming our way that will have a really big impact for a lot of people. The first is that Medicare is going to start reducing the amount that Medicare beneficiaries have to pay for their prescription drugs every year. Right now, there are some people who pay upwards of $10,000 for their prescription drugs when they're enrolled in a prescription drug plan. And by 2025, Medicare will limit the amount that people have to pay every year to $2,000. We know that more than 1 million people are paying more than that. So this is going to be a really big change for a very large number of people. And another really big important change is that Medicare is finally going to be allowed to negotiate the prices of popular prescription drugs. We're going to know the first 10 drugs that will be negotiated by the fall of this year, and the negotiated prices will become available in 2026. And that's not the end. There are going to be more drugs added every year, and we could see as many as 60 drugs with negotiated prices by 2030.
You know, a lot of our viewers are tuning in, trying to decipher some of these changes for 2023. Is there anything else you want to tell them, you know, with regards to these changes? You've mentioned a lot already.
Yeah, this new law has an incredible number of provisions that are really going to help dramatically reduce prescription drug prices and costs for a lot of people. There are millions of people in this country who are on Medicare, and AARP is very well aware that many of them have been struggling with high prescription drug costs. And the provisions in this law are going to go a long way towards making sure that everyone has access to the drugs that they need.
Okay, and then I'm sure that there's a place online where people can go for more information, Lee. Where can people go to get this information you've talked about, and perhaps some other information as well?
People who want to learn more can go to aarp.org/rx.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, Lee Purvis, we really appreciate everything that you've said with regards to breaking down some of these changes for those older Americans. I'm sure that they're going to be thrilled with some of these changes you mentioned, and then where they can go, aarp.org, to get some more information on that. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Following yesterday's front, we are now left with some dry air as we finish off this work week. But your first alert to our next chances for rain, that is going to arrive as we're heading into this upcoming weekend. Not an all-day rain event for either one day, but better chances will be as we are heading into our Sunday. The reason being, we've got an area of low pressure that's going to develop and right along the Gulf Coast there, and we are going to see some moisture move in as a result of that. So really, most of your Saturday does look to be on the drier side. We'll start off with some sun. These clouds will fill in as we're heading into the afternoon. Notice by 5 o'clock, still looking at dry conditions. It may not be until closer towards 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night that we see a couple of isolated showers making their way into the mid-south, carrying over through the overnight into the early morning hours on Sunday. And as mentioned, not an all-day rain event. There will be some breaks and some dry air too. So just a few isolated showers by lunchtime on Sunday, with a better chance to see some isolated to scattered showers as we're heading into our Sunday afternoon, but tapering off by Sunday night. We'll briefly dry out as we're heading into Monday, the start of the new work week. We do have a better chance of rain as we're heading into the middle of the week. Our second round will move in on Tuesday. Notice by Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock or so, isolated to scattered showers. These will fill in throughout the day. In fact, Tuesday rain does look to be quite widespread, especially by the lunch hour heading into the afternoon. Notice by 4, 5, 6 o'clock or so on Tuesday afternoon, starting to see some of that rain taper off, but we could have some cool air that filters in behind it, cold enough where we could even see a couple of flurries on the backside of this system. Now, we're still several days out from this event, but I will say at this point, this type of setup, it doesn't look very promising. Most of us will not see anything, and I'm not expecting any major accumulations or impacts from that, but we could see some of those flurries, especially for areas of north and along I-40 that continue Tuesday night into our Wednesday morning. So rainfall amounts all the way through Wednesday generally look to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so. That means I'm not looking at any sort of major flooding concerns, as we'll have that that falls over the next several days. As mentioned, we are going to be rain-free for today. We've got that cold front that has moved to the east of here. We've got a lot of sunshine in store for us today. It is going to be breezy. We've got these winds out of the west and southwest around 20, 25 miles per hour this morning. We could see those wind gusts closer towards 30 miles per hour, especially late this morning and into the early afternoon. And those temperatures will keep us overall pretty seasonable, just slightly above the average. 58 degrees the high here in Memphis today, 54 in Brownsville, 55 in Alamo, with 61 in Oxford, 57 in Marks, with 51 in Wynne, and 52 in Marion. Now tonight it is going to be a chilly night, back into the 30s, which is where we're supposed to be for this time of year. Just a few clouds, mainly clear skies across the Mid-South. And as mentioned, we're looking at dry weather today and and tomorrow. But we will see some rain chances this weekend, primarily on Sunday afternoon. Dry as we head into the start of next week for your Monday, but then more rain by Tuesday, carrying over into Wednesday. Generally will be pretty seasonable, meaning temperatures are right where they should be, with those highs into the 50s and overnight lows generally in the 30s.
Before we let you go, I want to show the actionnews5.com website here. This is the homepage, and if you look on the homepage right now, you will see one of the top stories here. Newborn baby found in a dumpster in Jackson, Tennessee, and this coming to us a short time ago. Within the last few minutes, Jackson Police Department investigating an incident where a newborn was found in a dumpster. A person found a baby boy alive in this dumpster on Carver Street, 3:30 this morning. The baby was taken to the hospital and treated. So the baby is alive. That is good news. And so there is a quote here. I can't imagine feeling so desperate that you feel this is your only option. I'm so thankful to the person who called 911 and to JPD for their swift actions in saving this baby's life. That coming from the mayor of Jackson, Tennessee, in a Facebook post. And they're asking anyone with information to contact police. So this is one of the top stories on actionnews5.com. If you go to the homepage, you'll see it right there. You'll also see some of the other top stories that we have, including this Digital Desk interview I just did a short time ago about a doctor explaining how intermittent fasting works and the benefits of it. You can also go to the pull-down menu here. The Digital Desk is at the very end. If you hit that, you will see all of our interviews on the Digital Desk, and you can share them on social media. You can share them via email or via text. Great information there, or just watch in your entirety. That does it for us here at the Digital Desk. Action News 5 at midday coming up at the top of the hour, and then we will be back in it again tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for a Friday edition of the Action News 5 Digital Desk. See you then.